Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. All right. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Hang on. I've got to change my name again. That is my Lawyers and Dragons name. Hang on one second. Totally forgot about that. There we go. All right. We are ready. We have Indy over here being a good doggo. We've also got Holmes somewhere around here. You guys missed it. He decided, like, as soon as I sat down and I had all the cameras on and everything, Holmes just sat down right here. Like, he was like, I'm ready. You give treats when you stream, so I'm ready. But then I think I took too long. And yeah, so anyway, he'll probably be back. I'm sure he'll be back because I literally have them right here on my desk. So, right, Indy? Anyway, I hope you guys are having a good Monday. Oh, here he is. Hi, buddy. Hi, buddy. There you go. You want a Treato? I'm probably gonna have to put these in my desk drawer because otherwise you're gonna try to kill all of them. There we go. That's better. Okay. Okay. So, happy Monday. Happy Memorial Day. I always feel weird saying happy Memorial Day because it's kind of a somber day for a lot of people. And I know that sometimes it's kind of a tough day for a lot of people to be to go through because there's a lot of memories and trauma and stuff related to service and particularly combat zones. But if to everyone, happy Memorial Day, or at least commemorative Memorial Day, I guess we could say. I hope you have a good day today. I hope that you have if you are from the United States, I hope you're having a good day off from work. And if not, then I hope you're having a wonderful Monday regardless. So, otherwise, I hope you had a great weekend. And here's a start to our brand new week. So, one thing that I wanted to say before we get started is last week we heard from one of the cousins. Today we are going to be hearing from two more cousins of Erik and Lyle Menendez. Last week on my Instagram account, I did a short little reel that was an recap Instagram recap. Did I mix those two words together? Anyway, so I did a short little recap on the testimony there. And I think that what I want to start doing is probably each Monday after the day's testimony, I'll probably do some kind of a short recap like that, just to kind of talk about some of my impressions and, kind of some of the testimony that we heard. So if you find that you for whatever reason, you can't get through all of this testimony today, I imagine there's probably going to be some more trigger warning type of content that is going to be happening again today, because we're probably going to get it. I mean, these are cousins that are being brought in by the defense. My guess is that the purpose of bringing them in is to give an idea of what the family life was like. If the interest in the testimony is from the defense, it probably is because it was a bad experience. So if that is difficult for you to get through, by all means, it's just mental health is most important. So, take a step back if you need to, go outside, go do something else, if it becomes difficult. So I am adding today. You should expect a quick little recap after we're done here with today's testimony. So that way I mean, just for anyone that either you don't have time or you just don't really feel like you need to subject yourself to this testimony. So I think that's about it. I'm excited for today's testimony. I think that it's going to be very interesting, I mean, it's probably going to be a little tough to get through again, but I think that we'll get through it together. So I see some folks in the chat also saying hi. Oh, I see my big brother, Andy the Game Maker. Good meowing. Holmes says good meowing back to you. We've got let's see, we've got on the ground, hola / hi from Spain. Buenos dias to on the ground. Darissa Claire, good morning from Ohio. Love it. We got Maya Johnson, good morning from Pennsylvania. We got Melissa Simok, happy Memorial / Menendez Monday. Love it. Reflective Memorial Day. That's a good way to do it, Shireen. I think that's a good way to do it. Debbie Faison Cook, thank you so much for the compliment about the scarf. And that's a good morning to Alita and Indy. Thank you. We've got Daisy Paises. I was going to say Paises. I'm still with on the ground in Spain. But Daisy Paises. Hey, buddy, I love you so much. And I'm sure that you love the sight of your own butt, but I don't know that everyone else needs to see it that close up. And he's really just trying to get into these treats now. You are just the cutest and most mischievous cat, but I love you so much. Let's see here. We've got Otterly Bell. Good afternoon with a pink hand waving with a pet sighting. Bronwyn W says, I've been late to these streams the last few times due to maternity leave, but I go back to work tomorrow and trying to wake up early again is rough. I am so sorry. Good luck to you with that. I am sure that with all of the adjustments of everything, I'm sure that is something to go through for sure. Let's see. We've also got Mary M. Greetings from Munich, Germany. And Braun and W also say good morning to everyone. And let's see, maybe one or more too. Lottie Geek Love. Hello, everyone from sunny Berlin. That live stream is the perfect holiday activity. Love it. And Mountain Princess 207. Hello, everyone. My brain did not register Monday because of the holiday, but I am excited to bring you all to work today. I love it. I know. Isn't it funny how when we have a holiday like this, it's just sometimes it can just mess with the whole routine, right? And then the whole week kind of feels off because Tuesday feels like Monday, Wednesday feels like Tuesday, and then you get to Friday and you're like, wait, it's Friday already? That's crazy. So anyway, Holmes doesn't have that problem because every day is like the last day, is exactly what he wants to do with his day. Okay. All right, let's get to it, shall we? All right. Okay. So there's about an hour's worth of oral argument before this point. They are arguing about testimony. We are skipping through that because this way we can fit two witnesses in one day. So we are starting with, this is going to be let's see, Kathleen Simonton. I will update the chat. I'll pin the chat. I'll pin a comment in the chat, and then you guys will be able to see the spelling for that, but it's also in the description below. So
the defendants are in court with their attorneys. Both juries are present. Good morning to you all, ladies and gentlemen. And we're ready to resume with the trial. The defense may call its next witness.
Kathleen Simonton.
All right, if you would step forward, please, and stand behind the court reporter and then face the court clerk, and she will give you the oath. Okay.
Raise your right hand, please, to be sworn. You solemnly swear that the testimony you give and the cause now pending before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please seated. Would you tell us your full name, spell your last name?
Kathleen A. Simonton, Simonton.
Yes, please spell your first name, please.
Kathleen.
All right, if you could move a little closer to that mic, or if you're comfortable, we'll move it closer to you.
It's fine.
this is a very 90s dress. Very 90s outfit, even like with the big earrings and the hair.
Yes.
Anything.
Okay. Simon, are you related to Lyle and Erik Menendez?
Yes.
And what's your relationship?
I am Joan and Arnold's fifth child.
So let's move the microphone a little closer to her.
I'm
Well, you stay where you are. We'll move it. And if necessary, we can turn up the sound a little bit as well.
sorry.
She seems very nervous.
All right, why don't you speak
Understandably
into
so.
it again?
I'm Joan and Arnold's fifth child, Kathy.
All right, can everybody hear?
Okay. And do you know Alan Anderson?
Yes.
And is he a cousin of yours as well as Lyle and Erik?
Yes.
Are you a little nervous?
Very.
Yeah.
When you were younger, did you ever go and stay at Lyle and Erik's home?
Yes.
And when was that you went there?
In 1976.
And do you know how much older, Lyle's birthday is 1968, Erik's birthday is 1970. Do you know how much older you are than them?
They were 8 and 5, I believe, so
Okay.
I was 15.
You were 15?
Mm-hmm.
And did you go there with someone else?
My sister Diane.
And was she younger or older than you?
She was older.
How long did you spend in the home with Kitty and Jose Menendez?
Approximately 2 months.
Were you supposed to stay longer?
Yes.
Did you leave early?
Yes.
Did you leave early because you were sent away?
No.
Why did you leave early?
I chose to leave early.
Why?
I didn't like it there.
Can you speak up a little more?
I'll try.
Thanks. In addition to spending time in the home, did you get taken on some sightseeing trips?
Yes.
And Joan, I'd like to mark, excuse me. What's the next one?
159.
I have two photographs, each of them have the smaller originals on back. 159 is an interior shot of what appears to be a museum, and one of them is an exterior shot of what appears to be a museum.
Yes.
Solitude?
Yes, I believe so.
That'd be 160. How long did you,
That mic is just too close to her.
how much of the summer was spent on these trips?
It was the early beginning part, and not very much, but then we did go places.
And was that fun?
Yes.
Did you have a good time?
Yes.
And was that different than your experience in the home?
Yes.
What was different about it?
When we would go on these trips to see places, Jose was not with us, and we seemed more relaxed.
Did the family operate differently in a public setting than they did in the privacy of their own home?
Yes, I would say so.
And in what ways?
More reserved.
Would there be demonstrations of anger in a public setting usually?
Not where people were around, no.
Okay. And is this the kind of home where they had people in the home regularly? Other kids came over to play,
No.
neighbors came over?
No, not at all.
Do you remember ever seeing anyone in the home during the time you were staying there other than the immediate family?
Not that I can recall.
Did they live in a neighborhood where there were other houses and
Oh, sure.
other children?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and those children never came over to play?
Not in the house.
So they could play outside?
Yes.
Did that happen frequently?
No.
Do you remember an incident? Well, let me put it this way. Did you used to go to a public swimming pool with the boys?
Yes, on a few occasions.
And did Jose show up or go along with you?
He went with us.
And can you describe what those visits to the pool were like?
Why do I feel like this is going to be a bad?
Strange in my mind because he would, while we were allowed, my sister and I, Diane, were allowed.
Okay, there'd be motion to strike the opinion explained, Your Honor.
Right, objection sustained, the answer is stricken.
Okay. You and your sister.
Would be allowed to go and do whatever we wanted at the pool. The entire time we were there, Lyle and Erik were not. They were.
What were Lyle and Erik doing?
They were being taught or directed how to swim intently to me.
Intently?
Yes.
What do you mean? What did you observe that appeared to be quite intense to you?
Because he would have them do strokes or something over and over again in a section of the pool, and they were not allowed to leave that section of the pool. They weren't allowed to go out of the little area.
And when you say over and over again, would this be a 15, 20-minute session?
No, it was the 2 to whatever hours we were there.
So the entire time they were being drilled
Yes,
in swimming?
yes.
Were they ever allowed to just go splash around and play with the other kids?
No,
And I think you indicated they were 8 and 5 at the time.
yes.
And if they didn't swim correctly or didn't seem to be getting it, was there encouragement, kind encouragement, or criticism? What would be the response of Jose?
Just to do it again and to keep doing it.
And was there any idea that if you finally get it right, then you can go do something fun? Or
Oh, no. You would go on to something else.
okay. During the time that you lived in the home, did you have certain responsibilities that kept you around the boys most of the time?
Yes, I had many.
And what were those responsibilities that kept you around the boys?
Cleaning and watching them and just taking care of them, kind of, I would say.
Would you say that the majority of the time that you were in the home, they were there also?
Oh, yes.
And was there a difference in Kitty's behavior when it was just the 3 of you or the 4 of you with your sister at home versus when Jose would arrive?
Yes.
And what was that difference? What would it be before he was there? What would it be after?
It would be more tense when he was there, but it would be more tense.
So it was tense when he wasn't there and more tense when he was?
To me, yes.
And was there any little ritual that you used to engage in when Jose would come home?
Depending on the mood Kitty was in.
Can you explain what you mean by depending on the mood she was in?
If she felt something happened during the day, and she wanted to get him and Jose into a good mood, we would kind of be around the front of the landing for when he came home.
To greet him?
Yes.
Now, she would do that every time that the boys were going to get in trouble?
Not every time, just when she felt worried.
Would she do it if she felt that she was going to get in trouble?
Judgment
Yeah.
calls for speculation, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Did you have an incident when you were back there regarding getting caught smoking?
Yes.
And you were 15?
Yes.
Were Kitty and Jose smokers?
Yes.
Heavy smokers?
Yes.
And can you tell me what happened? Where did the incident start?
Downstairs, we stayed in the bedroom that was downstairs in the basement.
When you say we, you mean you and
My sister and I.
Okay.
At night, I would go and by the garage because it was right there. And I would have a cigarette before going to bed.
And on one instant, did Kitty catch you?
Yes.
And what happened?
I was severely reprimanded for smoking in their house.
What did she look like when she was doing this? Was there anything unusual about her appearance?
She did several things.
You want to stand? If you could stand up and demonstrate for us, please.
I can do it sitting if she.
But it's hard to see.
She's like, I'd rather not stand up, please.
She gritted
Still
her
very
teeth and
exposed.
she clenched her fist and yelled and made a face. And then she paraded around with her hands on her hips and then continuing to yell at me for smoking in their house and how ungrateful I was.
Did that face just look like anybody's face when they get mad?
Objection calls for speculation.
Rephrase the question.
Was there something unusual about her face when she would get mad? Like,
It would squint up. It would get tight
was it frightening?
to me.
Did she ever hit you?
No, she never hit me.
Did you ever have any fears that something bad was going to happen during these sessions when she'd yell at you?
Objection.
Rephrase the question, please.
When she was clenching her fist, did you see that behavior on more than one occasion?
Yes.
And when she would engage in that behavior, did you have some fears? How did it feel to have her doing that to you, clenching her fist and gritting her teeth?
Very scary.
Same objection, motion to strike.
Overruled, the answer will stand.
Was she a strong woman?
Yes.
You said you'd see this behavior when she was angry. Would she do the same thing if she was angry with Erik and Lyle?
Yes.
And would that be in your presence? You'd see her doing it?
Oh, yes.
Besides situations when she was mad at you or mad at them, would she engage in that behavior on other occasions?
Yes.
What would be happening that would trigger it?
You would just see her and you would go look at her and she'd be just sitting in a room just doing that. And then after a little bit, she would be fine.
So nothing would appear to be going on and all of a sudden she would go into this behavior?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Nobody was around her during this time, so I don't know what would have caused it. We would be in one room and she would be in another room and you could look over her or something would make a noise and then you look at her and I wasn't going to go over and see what was wrong.
Why?
I wouldn't want to know what was wrong
Why?
because it might be directed at me.
And what would happen?
I'd get yelled at or in trouble.
Now, when she would get into this position, would it just be a fleeting thing like you just did, or would she hold it for a long period of time?
It depended. Sometimes she held it and sometimes it was a fleeting thing. It depended.
And was there ever any connection between this and periods when she would seem to stare off into space?
I think maybe her facial expressions changed sometimes.
Okay. Did you see situations where she seemed to stare off in space and be kind of lost?
Well, yeah, she would sit and or stand and out the window or look yeah.
Now, we were talking about the incident where you got caught smoking. I believe you said she came to where you were. She was in this position and she was also placing her hands on her hips.
Yes, she would parade around with her hands on her hips and she did quite a few gestures. And
Mark another exhibit. I'm sorry,
161.
Showing you what was marked as 161. Do you recognize your aunt in that picture?
Yeah.
Is that the position you're talking about, the hands on the hips?
Yes, exactly.
Would she have her feet spread apart like they are in
Yeah,
this picture?
yes.
After
That's exactly what that looks
she
like.
found you back there smoking, how long did she yell at you out there?
I would say maybe 3 to 5 minutes, maybe. When you're being yelled at, sometimes time is, you can't remember.
Were you saying anything to defend yourself during this
Oh,
time?
no,
Why?
that would get me in more trouble.
So for 3 to 5 minutes, what is she yelling? I mean, is she
Just how ungrateful I was for smoking in their house and all that she had done for me. How could I do that? It was their house.
And did it make you feel ungrateful?
It made, yes, it made me feel or that I was just stupid for doing that.
Did she suggest that you were stupid? Is it hard for you to go back to this time and remember?
Objection, leading.
Overall.
Yeah, I don't like to think of the times when she yelled at me. She yelled at me for several occasions that upset me when I think about them.
That's
Did
completely
it still
understandable.
upset you today?
Yes,
You can
Why?
tell that she's very uncomfortable here.
How old are you today?
32.
You married?
Yes,
You have children?
yes. 2 boys.
This happened in 1976.
Yes.
Why does it upset you today?
Because she could be her intensity on her anger or her rage could be very scary.
After she yelled at you outside by the garage, were you crying at that time?
I don't remember.
What happened next?
She grabbed me by my arm. She didn't, to tell me I was coming upstairs with her. She didn't continue to grab it. She grabbed it, pulled me a bit, and told me I was coming upstairs. Then she let go. And I followed her upstairs to the landing, to the top landing of the upstairs, and where Jose by this time was standing.
And what happened up there?
She told Jose, I stood there, and she told Jose what had happened downstairs.
Did you just say, gee, I caught Kathy smoking, or what?
No, she was yelling, I caught Kathy smoking in the house. How could she? What are you going to do?
And what did Jose do?
He then continued and started to yell at me. And after a while of yelling, I don't remember exactly the words he used, but he was yelling and telling me I was basically the same thing. Kitty told me that I was being ungrateful and how could I smoke in their house? And I would not smoke in their house again.
Now, when you said it was by the landing, was this near the boys' room?
It was in the beginning of the hallway, yes.
And were the voices loud enough they could be heard through the house?
Yes, I'm sure they could hear it outside.
And how long did Jose yell at you?
Again, probably another 3 to 5 minutes, I'm not sure.
Now, at the end of this yelling at you, you said he told you you will not smoke in the house again?
I would not smoke in their house again.
And that included outside the house?
In my opinion, it included anywhere he could see me.
Did you ever smoke again?
Not where I thought I could be caught by them. No, I would take walks and where sometimes where they thought if they thought I was asleep real quick around the corner, or during the day if she thought I was doing something, I'd go around the corner. I mean, there was plenty of places where they lived there to go without them seeing you.
Why didn't you smoke outside again, right outside the house?
Would you want to go through that again? I wouldn't want to be yelled at like that again.
And was that the only time you were yelled at like that while you were there?
For smoking, I was yelled at several other times. For other things, household chores I didn't do right, got severely yelled at.
Were there other times that you did things you were going to get in trouble for and didn't?
Oh, yes. I thought, yes.
Like what?
We were cleaning the kitchen, and she had some Waterford crystal glasses, and while I was drying them, I snapped the stem right off of it.
Whoa.
And it took me, I would say, an hour or more to get up the courage to go tell her I had done this, because I was so afraid of what she was going to do because I had broken one of her glasses. And we were told, you hand wash them, to be careful. And on that instance, I found it rather bizarre because it took me so long to get the courage to tell her, and I got in absolutely no trouble at all.
Were there other things you did that were far less significant for which you got in trouble?
Oh, yes. Like my cleaning chores, I thought were, to me, off the wall because I got in so much trouble.
Was there an objection to the question or to the
No,
answer?
the question was general, the answer specific, and there's a motion to strike as being irrelevant.
As to being irrelevant or non-responsive, I don't understand. You have no objection to the question.
I would object to the question, then, Your Honor, as calling for irrelevant matter that would have already been ruled on the court.
All right, let's have the question read back.
In other words, I didn't hear the question. Oh, I wasn't listening for the question.
Question, were there other things you did that were far less significant for which you got in trouble?
All right, the objection is sustained.
Kind of a
Did
ticky
you-
tacky objection,
Could you
I think.
predict what things you would get in trouble for?
Not at all.
And so what form of behavior would you adopt to try and not get in trouble? If you didn't know what you were going to get in trouble for.
You became invisible or very quiet, and you didn't create any waves.
Were you aware that Lyle and Erik were participating in sports at the time?
Yes.
And do you remember which sports they were playing?
Tennis or soccer, they played both, but I can't remember what exactly.
Was there an incident in which Lyle did not want to play?
Yes, yes. I think it was tennis, but it could have been soccer. Yes, yes.
And what happened?
Oh, he got in a lot of trouble. Yes.
Did Kitty get mad at him?
Kitty got mad at them and then told Jose when he got home.
Now, when Kitty got mad at him, was it the same process you've described with the fists and the face? Was that
On that instance, it was part of that, yes, but it wasn't probably as intense as when I got caught smoking, no.
okay? And then when Jose got home,
Oh, he yelled at him and told him that he would play.
he would play?
Oh, yes.
And did he leave right then to play, or what happened?
Oh, no, Erik and Lyle got sent to his room then.
And was this a common form of punishment in that?
Yes, very much so.
And did it happen to Erik as well as Lyle?
Yes, but on fewer occasions.
On
On less occasions, Lyle got more disciplined and in trouble than Erik did. He did get in trouble, but not as often as Lyle.
Did Lyle get more attention,
Yes, a lot more.
and he also got more discipline?
Yes, a lot more, yes.
And what would happen when the boys would be sent to their room? Was it go to your room for 15 minutes, or?
Oh, you did. It varied. It varied from a half hour to 2 hours to not coming out at all.
So they wouldn't be permitted to leave the room at all?
Not that I ever saw, no. I never, once they were sent to the room until he said they could come out, I never saw them.
And when they were sent to the room, would Jose ever go down there?
Yes.
And this particular incident we were talking about where Lyle didn't want to go play, did Jose go down to the room?
Yes, after a while.
And how long was he in the room?
A half hour, 45 minutes maybe.
And when he came out of the room, did Lyle come out with him?
No.
Did you see Lyle again that evening?
I can't remember now.
If you don't remember,
I can't remember at the moment.
were there any rules about what you could do when one of the boys was sent down the hall and Jose went into the room with him?
You couldn't go down there. I mean, you stayed in the living room or you did something else, but you didn't go anywhere near the hallway.
And did that seem to apply to Kitty as well?
Oh yes, we all stayed in. Yeah, nobody ever went down.
And did you see this type of punishment where one of the boys is sent to the room and then Jose goes down there and is with them for a period of time and come back? Did you see that happen on more than one occasion?
Oh, quite several.
Several, 2 or 3? Or
No,
more?
several more.
More like 10, 15, 20?
12, 15, yes.
And it would happen to both of the boys?
Yes, but only a few times to Erik that I can remember at that time.
Did Lyle play the next day? I mean, did he follow the order?
Oh, yes. Yes. If you were told you were going to do something, it was understood you would do it.
Did you ever see him refuse again to go play?
No.
What was the atmosphere in the house during these times when the boys would be sent to their room or?
We would become very quiet, but we were always quiet, so we were quieter, I would say.
Were the boys well disciplined?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry. Were the boys well disciplined?
Oh, do you mean well by continually to be disciplined? Yes.
I don't mean good discipline. I mean, did they follow orders given?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Did everybody follow the orders
Yes.
quickly?
Well, when you were told to do something, you did it.
And if you argued with Jose, what would happen?
You'd get in more trouble, but there was never really any argument that I can remember.
When he would talk to you, if you resisted at all, what would he say to you? I mean, would he criticize you as a person or just criticize
Oh, yeah.
you?
No, you were being stupid or you didn't know better or you were just dumb.
And this happened to you as well as the boys
Oh, yes.
frequently?
When you were in trouble, depending on what you had done, yes.
Were you in trouble a lot?
I seem to be.
Were the boys in trouble a lot?
They seem to be.
Were these bad boys, did you think?
Oh, no.
Calls for improper conclusions by the witness.
Did they,
Objection sustained. The answer is no.
did
I mean,
they
you can ask that, like,
act badly around you?
did you think
I don't think so.
it was warranted?
The two children you have are both
Boys,
boys. And how old are they?
10 and 11.
Was there a difference in the way the boys acted when they were away from the home, say visiting relatives?
They seem freer or more carefree or
Were they generally freer and more carefree when they were in a public versus a private setting?
yes.
Was Kitty warm to them?
No,
Was she affectionate?
no.
She ever hug them?
Only if they did well in the sport or they did something that you would be rewarded for, and that was her reward.
I mean, performing
Yes.
well up to her
Yes.
expectations.
Yes.
Oh,
Then she'd hug them.
Quickly.
And did you ever hear her talk to them in kind of a soft tone of voice, kind of a caring, comforting kind of voice?
No.
Do you have any pet names for them?
No.
Call them Sweetie or
No.
Pumpkin?
No. No.
Would she smile at them? Would she smile at you?
Not that I can remember.
How about if you did something good?
Oh, if you did something very good, yes, that was another reward.
Was her smile?
Yes.
If, do you remember seeing Lyle leave for practice? You said now you don't know if it's tennis or soccer, but would Jose take him on the weekends to go practice?
Yes.
And, excuse me, when they returned, could you tell how things had gone?
Oh, yeah. If they were sent to their room, you knew it was a bad, or if he came, you could, yeah.
What could you see? Could you tell when they came in the door?
Oh, yeah, by their faces.
Whose faces?
All of their faces.
And what would Jose's face look like?
Tense, angry,
And what would Lyle's face look like?
sad,
And what would Erik's face look like?
sad.
And this was because the practice hadn't gone well?
Well-
Cause of speculation and hearsay.
This is after they would leave for practice and then come home?
Yes.
Did he, you said that when you would get reprimanded, you'd be called stupid and that type of thing. Were the same terms used for the boys?
Yes.
On one occasion or more than one occasion?
More than one occasion.
Frequently?
I would say frequently.
You talked about times when Lyle particularly would be sent to his room, and sometimes he wouldn't come out at all for the
No.
rest of the day or evening.
No.
And sometimes he did come out.
Yes.
And would Jose always go to the room during the time they were in there being punished? Or frequently? Or
I would say
Why don't you rephrase the question?
Yeah,
maybe she started answering so much again. Would he always go to the room when they were sent to the room for punishment?
I would say 80% of the time.
And
gives me
during
such a
the
creepy
times when
feeling.
you saw Lyle come out of the room, how would he look?
He would have a sad or blank look upon him.
Now, what's this blank look you're talking about?
Just a staring look.
Did he snap out of it quickly and start playing and again get happy, or would this last?
It would last for a while, yes. He would just come and sit down somewhere.
Oh, that's so sad.
You said that part of your chores were babysitting,
Yes, yes,
and did you do puzzles with Erik?
yes.
Yeah, no, that's marked the next exhibit.
162.
Showing you what we've marked as 162. Do you recognize the people in that picture?
Yes.
And who are they?
Myself and Erik.
And was this the summer that you were visiting?
Yes.
Was there a difference in the personalities of Lyle and Erik?
Oh, very much so.
And what was Lyle like?
He was more talkative, more, I would say, outgoing.
And if he got hurt, would he show it?
No.
Were you allowed to cry in this family?
Sustained.
Was Lyle allowed to cry in this family?
I would say, in my opinion, no.
What would happen?
Objection sustained. The answer is correct.
Did you see situations where Lyle started to cry?
Yes.
And what would happen to him?
There you go.
Jose would just say Lyle in a very deep voice, and he would straighten up.
So was it a signal of some sort when he just said his name like that?
I would say so.
And if Erik started to cry, what would happen to him?
He was probably nothing, and he was treated so much different.
How do you mean?
He was left alone more than Lyle was.
Left alone in terms of being all by himself, or just wasn't the focus of attention?
He wasn't the focus of attention.
And sometimes that attention, are you talking about attention? I know it's my word, but are you talking about it as good attention or bad attention or both?
Both.
What was Erik's personality like?
He was quiet. I just remember him being very quiet, very to himself.
When Lyle was hurt by something, if he didn't cry, would there be any other expression that you would see on his face?
He would just get a look again, like a sad or a blank look.
Same blank look. Now, does this blank look like you're just staring off into space?
Yeah.
or-
I mean, just an unexpressionable look.
Did Kitty express concern for the boys' safety?
I don't think so.
What would happen if they got injured?
They would be told to go clean themselves up, or if while we were there, we would go in the bathroom and clean up, like if they scraped their knee or something.
I can't hear the word.
If they would be told just to go into the bathroom and clean up their knee or whatever, or while we were there, on occasions we would go in there and just help them clean up their knee or their whatever they scraped or at the time.
Did you ever see Kitty clean up their injuries?
No,
Of course not, because she
Would
wasn't
she
a nurturing
console
mother.
them,
We've gotten
ask
that
how
at
they
this point.
felt?
no.
Why would
Did
she?
she seem concerned at all about their injuries?
I would say no.
Did you feel that you were free to make decisions about your activity?
Oh, no.
Objection,
Sorry.
irrelevant.
Sorry.
Well,
I have a
it's a
vague
foundational
question.
question, Your
Well,
Honor.
objection sustained, the answer is correct. It's too general. You have to be
Yeah.
specific.
I was trying to do foundational as to paragraph 5. Last paragraph, bottom of page 5, which was not objected to by the people.
The last paragraph?
It starts on the bottom of page 5. The last sentence goes on to the top of page 6. I didn't want to lead, so I was asking.
Okay, well, just hold on. Well, the question you asked didn't seem to relate to that, so you may re-ask in a different way.
Was this a family in which Kitty and Jose exerted a lot of control,
Yes.
more control than seemed normal?
Judgment calls for an opinion and proper opinion of persons.
Sustain.
When you would go to a restaurant, could you order what you wanted to eat?
No,
Could the boys order what they wanted to eat?
not that I remember.
Who would decide what you were going to eat?
Jose would tell us this would be good for us to eat. This is what you need to eat.
What if you didn't want to eat it? Did you ever say, no, I don't like eggs, or I don't like liver, or,
No, I tried to do that once.
and?
I was told you would try what you need. You have to try it in order to know if you like it.
I mean,
And you were told you had to try it.
that's pretty
How could
normal.
one know if one
I
didn't
feel like
like it
most
without one
parents
trying?
Are
And
going to tell
you
their
were
kid
15
that,
when you were back
a
there.
kid
Did
at
you
their
know
school
you
that.
didn't like certain things?
Oh, yes, yes.
Did that matter?
No, I had to try it still.
Did you, when you'd go to a restaurant and he would order things for you, were there ever situations where he'd order things you had tried before and knew you didn't like?
Objection, irrelevant.
Objection sustained. Let's see if we can have some time frame and relevance to things that occurred where the defendants were present.
Were the defendants present at the time when you would go to restaurants and
Yes.
they would order for you?
Yes.
And were you sometimes required to eat food that you'd eaten before and knew you didn't like?
Yes.
Did the boys argue back about what was they were to eat?
Probably
Not
not.
that I can remember, no.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about Lyle wetting his bed when you were there?
Yes.
He was 8 years old.
Well, so before we move on into that, this is one point that if that's the first thing that you learn about Kitty and Jose Menendez, that's like, oh, did they make kids at the table eat what they didn't want to eat? At least try it. Like that on its face, it sounds like a very normal thing, right? Like, I remember growing up, my parents would be like, well, you have to at least try it once because then you'll know that you don't like it. But if you never tried it, how would you know? Like that's a very normal thing. That's not on its own abusive. But I think in the context of everything else that we've heard and everything that we've heard so far from the previous witness about the various things that would happen at dinner time, and the fact that like it sounds like from the way that they are putting it, it sounds like it's not just like we are introducing you to new foods that you should be open to at least trying. This is like, I really don't care if you like it or don't like it. Because I mean, at this point, she's like at least 15 years old, right? So like at that point, I would think like you actually do have a pretty good idea of what you do and don't like. You've probably tried quite a few foods and whatnot. So it's like this does sound like a bit of a controlling nature by Kitty and Jose, and just like I really don't care what you want to eat. You're gonna eat what we're gonna eat. And that's that, which is yeah, I don't know. Like that detail on its own could go either way for some people, but in the context of everything else that we've heard so far, it doesn't surprise me.
Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
And how do you know about him wetting his bed?
We were in the kitchen one morning and Lyle started getting yelled at by Jose and Kitty, saying he was a sissy and a baby because he had wet his bed. And he started being called they were calling him names and getting mad at him. That's all I know. I left.
Why'd you leave?
Why stay? I went downstairs to my room.
What did Lyle look like?
Scared.
When you say why stay, was this boring or something, or?
I didn't want to see him being yelled at for wetting his bed. I didn't need to stay there, and I didn't want to watch. I didn't care to watch him being yelled at.
Why didn't you step up and say, this isn't fair? He's a
Because then
kid."
I would be yelled at.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Doesn't matter. Jury heard the question. Jury gets it.
Do you remember anything about Erik having a speech problem?
He stuttered.
And what would happen? What would Kitty's reaction be to stuttering? Or Jose's, if you
They would
remember.
make fun of.
Excuse me, objection irrelevant unless in the presence of.
It's definitely relevant.
Sustained.
What?
Were you present to see
Yes.
Erik corrected by one or both of his parents who were
Yes.
stuttering?
Yes.
Who
Yes.
would do the correcting?
Kitty or Jose. It varied.
And did they do it in the same way, or did they each have their own style?
I think they each had their own style.
And what would Kitty do if Erik was stuttering?
I think she would just make fun of him, if I remember correctly.
And Jose?
I don't remember.
That's awful.
Did they try to help him, to work with him for it?
Not in my opinion.
And how often did you see them making fun of him for stuttering?
Only a couple times.
Was there
that's so sad.
competition between the boys?
Yes, a lot.
And was that just sort of a spontaneous experience, or did it seem to be suggested by somebody?
I think it seemed to be suggested by Jose. I think it was suggested by Jose.
Why do you think it was suggested? What would you see happen?
He would just say, the first to do this, or, to brush your teeth, to get in bed, to do anything.
It was a race?
Yes, it was a race.
And what happened to the loser?
It was usually Erik. And he was told, like, how come you can't be more like Lyle and do this, or just made to feel dumb.
Objection, I move to strike as conclusion on the witness.
All right, the latter portion of the answer, made to feel dumb, is stricken as a conclusion. Rest will remain.
Would you hear any words directed, and you said made to feel dumb? What made you think that he was made to feel dumb?
Because he,
Okay, objection sustained. The answer is stricken. That answer had been stricken.
Yeah.
No.
So then you'll have to ask a different
You
question.
can't
I'm
you can't
asking for
reference
what
the
the
question
words
or the
were
answer
that
that
she
was
heard.
struck.
All right, well, you'll have to ask it in some other way.
What were the words that you heard when Erik would lose in these competitions to brush your teeth, get in bed, get your pajamas on?
just like I said, why can't you be more like your brother and try harder, or things like that?
Any personal comments?
I can't remember right now.
You had a certain impression of this family before you went to visit them, is that correct?
Yes, very much so.
And what was your impression of this family?
That they,
Irrelevant.
Your Honor, this was unobjected to by the
Which paragraph?
second paragraph, page 7.
All right. I move withdraw my objection.
All right,
Did you have an impression of this family?
yes, I was told that they were like, I'm not sure if there was those words. That's what I remember, that they were the perfect family,
And where did this impression come from?
my family.
And did they describe it as a happy home, a successful home,
A successful, yes, happy home.
and were you-
Well-to-do home. Well-to-do home.
and did that seem to be important? The well-to-do, the success?
To,
Objection irrelevant.
objection sustained. It's ambiguously referring to. Important to who?
To the family members, you're saying that you got this information about the family. What family members are you referring to?
a lot from my grandmother.
Is that your mother's mother or
Yes,
your father's mother?
My mother's mother,
And your mother is
Joan,
Kitty's
Kitty's
sister.
sister.
So this would have been Kitty's mother.
Yes.
And what was the information you got from your grandmother?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Were you led to believe anything about how the children were doing in the home?
Objection, irrelevant.
Your Honor, this is also part of an unobjected to statement from the district attorney. It's the same paragraph.
All right, without arguing it, again, you'll have to lay a foundation as to the source of this to start with before it's admissible.
Did you have information from family members with regard to how the children were doing?
Not that I can remember now.
You said that you left early. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was there any relationship between your leaving early and the experiences you had in the home?
I mean, why I left early?
Yes.
I asked to leave because I was miserable there. I wanted to go home and have a normal summer, the rest of what I could have.
When you got home, did you tell anybody about what happened?
No.
Why?
Objection, irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did you ever ask to go back again?
Oh, no.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Any? Yes. I'm sorry? All right.
Sit down. Breathe. Breathing helps. So, I want to turn your attention, Mrs. Simon, to Erik's stutter. Okay. And you said both Kitty and Jose would react when he stuttered, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever hear either of them tell him when he stuttered that he knew better than to stutter?
Yes.
And would he then try to speak without stuttering?
Yes. He would try.
But he didn't succeed, did he?
No.
God, that's so
At
sad.
that time, do you know whether or not he was receiving any kind of speech therapy?
Not that I remember, no.
Now, did Lyle have a hobby where he collected certain types of toys?
He had a lot of animals in his room, but I don't remember much else.
Live animals or stuffed?
Oh, I'm sorry, stuffed animals.
Okay, I have a photograph, Your Honor. What's next? May I approach?
Showing you this photograph, do you recognize those toys as some of the animals that Lyle had?
These two, I believe I recognize.
Can
I
you-
believe I recognize the small one and the big one.
These are Sesame Street characters, the
Right.
big blue one.
Cookie Monster and I can't remember his
Can't
name.
remember who. You remember Cookie Monster is the blue one, right?
Yes,
Okay. You have kids and you've watched
Yes.
Sesame Street.
but not for a little while.
Any more clips?
I guess it's probably an Elmo or something.
And did Lyle play with these animals?
Yes.
Would he be alone in his room?
Oh, Kermit.
Did you ever observe him in his room playing with these animals by himself?
Just a few occasions.
You did see that?
Just a few occasions when I would go to, if he wasn't if he wasn't in his room in trouble, obviously, I mean, if he was just in his room,
Right.
I would go down just to see what he was doing, and he'd be in the corner playing with the animals, and then I would just say to see if he was okay, and then I would go back to the living room.
Did you ever hear him talking to them or having conversations?
No, I did not.
Did he ever take them out of his room?
I don't recall that I don't remember that he took them out. No,
So your only recollection of the stuffed animals was that they stayed in his room?
that I can remember.
Yes?
Yes, that I can remember.
Their fears uncooked. There wasn't Elmo in
Concerning
those
this
days?
competition that was encouraged
new information to
between
me.
Erik and Lyle, was it only Jose
That's
that
crazy.
seemed to egg them on, or did Kitty do that as well?
Kitty did it as well, but not as intently, I think, or as often.
Okay. As a general rule, was Jose a very intense person?
Yes, in my opinion, he was very intense.
And with respect to his interaction with his children, was he very intense?
Yes.
Do you have, you talked about the atmosphere in the household becoming more tense when Jose came home, correct?
Yes.
Did you see changes in the children's demeanor, how they looked, how they acted, how they held their bodies when Jose was coming home?
No, just that we would become more quieter than we were being quiet, but we would become more quiet.
Was it when, except for when the parents were yelling at people or someone was being disciplined, were the children quiet at home?
In my opinion, they were extremely quiet.
Were they children who would sit still and stay put if the parents were around and wanted them to do that?
Yes.
Do you recall approached by that? The photograph of yourself with Erik?
Care Bear, thank you for that. I didn't realize he first appeared in
This is that
1980.
summer, right, when Erik was
Interesting.
5.
Yes.
Exhibit 162 for the record.
Thank you.
Learning more new stuff.
Do you recall this photograph being taken?
Yes.
Who took it? If you remember.
You know, I remember being taken, but I don't remember who took it. Because we looked up. I remember looking up.
And the photographs that were taken at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, this is in New York City, correct?
Yes, yes. Kitty took those.
Kitty took these photographs
Yes.
at the Metropolitan Museum.
Yes.
Did Kitty take a lot of photographs during the 2 months that you were there?
She had seemed it when we went out. She had her camera with her.
Okay. Did she take photographs around the house?
On certain occasions, yes.
Did you ever see her posing the boys or telling the boys what to do for the camera?
If she wanted a cute picture, she'd get them on the couch or something, but that's all.
But would she have them pose so that she could take a
Not that I remember, no.
Was there any particular occasion, for example, for taking a picture of you and Erik with a jigsaw puzzle?
Not that I remember, no.
Do you recall what was happening just before this picture was taken?
Your objection is irrelevant.
Yeah, it's unclear what exactly she's getting at here.
In looking at that picture, would you say that you look particularly happy?
Objection calls for confusion.
Overall,
No,
And looking at Erik, does he look particularly happy?
not for somebody who's taking our picture. No, I would think we would be smiling if somebody was taking our picture.
Yeah, motion to strike everything after now.
objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Okay, just the only question is, does Erik look happy in that photograph?
No,
Do you know what was going on before this photograph was taken that caught the two of you looking that way?
I don't remember, no.
And would Erik sit at 5 with you on a couch and work a jigsaw puzzle like that for a significant period of time?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Cross.
All right, now we're on cross-examination.
Mrs. Simonton, the first time that you ever spent any extended period of time with the Menendez family would have been that summer, is that correct?
That was basically the only time I spent an extended time with them.
Prior to the summer of 1976, had you ever spent maybe a week with the family? Or
No.
had you? Okay. You're nervous, right?
I get very.
All right. I'm not going to bite you. Just sit back and try to relax, okay?
Comes across a
Did
little bit
you ever
condescendingly.
have family holidays with them before 1976?
She's clearly very nervous.
I believe they came and visited us, or we saw them, but I don't remember holidays. We lived in Arizona. That it was quite a distance.
All right. And the summer of 1976, I think you indicated that your sister also went with you. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that is correct.
Okay. And when you left, your sister stayed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Did Mrs. Menendez treat your sister any differently than the way she treated you that summer?
A lot different than me.
Ooh.
All right. And your sister was how much older than you that summer? Or how much older is she now?
She's over a year. She's 34 and I'm 32. She just turned 34 though, so.
So you're between 12 and 24 months apart?
Yeah, yes,
All
correct.
right. And so we don't have to keep doing the math. What year were you born in?
1961.
Was Mrs. Menendez, did she behave differently when her husband wasn't around?
Yes, yes.
Did she appear to be more relaxed when her husband wasn't around?
In general, I would say yes.
Now, the trips that you went on, could you tell me during that summer where you went?
We went to see the Statue of Liberty, the museum. We went to Washington so she could show us the monument. She showed us, I think it's Arlington Cemetery, where the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is.
All right, let me interrupt you for a moment. You went then to New York City, correct?
Mhm, yes.
And about how long was that trip?
It was over a couple days. We would go for a few hours, like the Statue of Liberty we went to one day, and then we came home. And then the museum we went one day, and then came home.
Now, at the time that you spent the summer in 1976, what house was the family living in? Are you familiar with the house?
I just know the one, Muncie.
All right, may I approach, please, Your Honor?
Yes.
You're referring to Exhibit 1.
Really quick. Kate Eliza, thanks so much for the member chat. I wish I could bring it up on the screen. StreamYard still doesn't let me see it on this side, but it says, I've been so MIA from these streams because my fur baby Smitty's passing. I have missed this community so much. Here's to being more present again. XOXO. Kate, I am so sorry to hear about that. These fur babies or fur buddies, however we want to call them, they are in our lives for a short period of time, and they bring us so much joy. And it's so unfair that they are only around for so long. But when they do go, they leave behind a very, very big void for all of us. That is bigger than what some might expect. So I am so sorry to hear about poor Smitty's passing. Hopefully it wasn't too painful. Hopefully, well, now the suffering is no longer, and hopefully, Smitty's in a better place now. So I am so sorry to hear about that, but hopefully over time that void can be filled with some kind of meaning, some kind of love, whatever that looks like, for you. But thank you so much for joining us. Okay, let's move on.
148.
Just wanted to say that real quick.
I believe you indicated it was the Muncie house, is that correct?
Yes.
And that's the house here on the exhibit that says 1972 through 77?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can't get it to stay. I'm just going to put it down.
Take down the other one.
That's all right. So that was the Muncie house that you're talking about, correct?
Correct.
And you were there about 2 months?
Approximately, yes. If in the timetable period that I can remember, I would say approximately 2 months.
So the trips to New York City then were day trips from New Jersey, is that correct?
Yes,
And how did you get there? Did you take the train or did you drive?
we drove.
How was Mrs. Menendez's driving when you drove to New York? Do you remember anything about it?
we got there fast.
Okay, were you frightened at all?
At times, yes. We would go and we would park in a garage, and if we went to the museum, we would park, and then we would either walk or we took a taxi a few times too.
So you would drive into the city and then take taxis or public transportation?
Yes.
Okay. And how many days was it that you went there? How many separate days did you go to New York City?
Two or three.
Then the trip to Washington, D.C., was that a trip where you stayed overnight in Washington, D.C.?
I don't remember staying overnight. I think we went very early in the morning and came home that night, if I can remember. In my best remembrance, that's what we did. But
Now, then the trip to Washington, D.C. then was just a day trip? Is that your memory today?
yes, because we didn't stay anywhere real long in any place we went.
And these two trips, Mr. Menendez did not accompany you?
No.
Did you have fun on either of these two?
Yes.
Okay, so there were occasions during the summer where you had fun?
Oh, yes. There were times I had a good time. They were usually out of the house, but I had a good time.
Did you ever have a good time with Mrs. Menendez?
Out of the house more, yes.
And when you were out of the house with her, this was not in the presence of her husband, is that correct?
Correct. We went out to family dinners. We went to the pool. That we did things that is as a group. But the times that I can remember that I had a good time, we just did with Kitty, yes.
Okay, so there was a difference between the two parents, wasn't there?
Yes, one was tense and one was more intense, I would say.
All right, and Mrs. Menendez, I believe you indicated it was less tense when you were alone with her and more tense when her husband was there.
Yes, I would say so.
Now, after you left, your sister stayed. When you left for that summer and went home, your sister stayed.
Correct.
Was Mr. Menendez around during the weekdays from Monday through Friday, or was he off at work?
He was off at work.
So you can kind of put together what the prosecution is trying to go for here, right? She's really trying to rehabilitate the image of Kitty Menendez to say, like, look, yeah, her behavior was not exactly the best, but she was ultimately a victim. You know, it sounds like everyone's kind of agreeing here, maybe, that Jose was an abuser. But that Kitty was a victim of her circumstances. And so, and ultimately what the prosecution wants the jury to think is, okay, so the brothers were being treated poorly by both of the parents, but that doesn't excuse them for killing their parents, right? Like, and especially with they have a stronger case. The prosecution has a stronger case with Kitty Menendez potentially by saying, basically by saying, like, look, she absolutely doesn't deserve to die because she's just appeasing her husband when he's around. She's also being abused by him. And so trying to increase the sympathy level by rehabilitating the image of Kitty Menendez. We'll see if it actually works out. But I for me personally, at this point, I'm still thinking back to the other times where she's still on her own and being abusive of the brothers and their cousins. So, like, even though, yeah, overall her temperature may have been a little bit lowered when Jose wasn't around, there was still a lot of abuse and mistreatment that was happening in that family when Jose was there versus when he wasn't there.
And did he come home at an early hour, or did he stay at work later?
I would think, in my opinion, he came home late. And sometimes he came home earlier.
But what was his habit? Was his habit more to come home late or early?
I would say it varied. I mean, I want to say late, but late maybe 5, 6. He did come home earlier at some times, but I would say 5 or, to me, that's late. I mean, 6 o'clock, early evening.
Now, did you ever see Mrs. Menendez hit either of her sons?
No.
Never saw her strike them?
No.
Did you ever see Mr. Menendez strike his sons?
No.
Were you ever struck during that summer that you were there?
No, I was just grabbed the one time.
That one time when you were smoking?
Yes.
All right. Now, You were 15 at the time when you were caught smoking, correct?
Correct.
Had you asked permission of the Menendezes if you could smoke?
Oh, no.
All right. Were you allowed to smoke in your own home?
No, I was not.
All right, because you were 15, right?
Correct.
All right. And when Mrs. Menendez found you, you were on the family property, is that correct?
I was out, yes. Yeah, I was on the property. I was outside of the garage. Not in the garage, outside of the garage.
All right, but you were still on the property, right?
Yes, I was on their property.
And you were an invited guest in their home, is that correct?
In their home, yes, I was.
And I believe you indicated that her reaction frightened and upset you, correct?
I thought it was overdone for what I was doing,
But you did continue to smoke that summer.
but not in their house. I was told not to smoke in their house anymore. I was not told necessarily not to smoke. I was told not to smoke in their house.
Did they ever say anything to you about they didn't want you to smoke in front of their sons?
No, no,
Did you ever see them encourage their sons to smoke cigarettes?
no, but they smoked cigarettes in front of their sons.
Right, they were adults, weren't they?
Well, yes.
Okay, and you were not.
No, I was not.
Would it be fair to say that Mr. Menendez, when he was home, ran the family?
Definitely.
And did you ever see Mrs. Menendez appear to be frightened of her husband?
Yes, I would say so.
I believe you indicated that on certain occasions, Mrs. Menendez would gather the family around to await Mr. Menendez's arrival.
Yes, depending on the mood of I think what occurred during the day, I would, yes,
And I think,
in my memory.
okay, now I may have misheard you, so please correct me, but something to do with if the boys were in trouble, that she would do this.
If something happened during the day that we got eaten, any of us four got in trouble, that she thought she might get in trouble for because she was home with us, and to me, in my memory, then she would have us kind of be happy when he got home.
Okay, so she would.
She wanted him in a good mood as soon as he walked in the door.
All right. And when any of you got in trouble and she thought she might get in trouble, did she appear tense over that?
Oh, definitely.
I believe you've talked about the fact that you saw her on occasion make a face and clench her fists,
A
correct?
grimace type, yes.
Right? And I believe you indicated that on occasion you could see her while she was sitting in the other room.
Yes, yes, on occasions.
You didn't know what she was thinking about, right?
No, I did not.
Did she ever appear to be upset to you?
Yes, and certain things happened. She was, yes.
Okay, did you ever feel sorry for her?
I would say it probably crossed my mind maybe once or twice, but it depended if she hadn't yelled at me for a while, then I probably wouldn't.
Well, I'm talking about on the occasions when you would be somewhere else and you saw her.
Getting yelled at or something?
No, let me just ask a
Okay.
question. When you saw her and she was by herself and she was
Doing,
doing this and you didn't know what was going on in her mind, did you ever feel sorry for her?
yes, I would say yes.
Now, I believe you've indicated an incident where you broke one.
Quick reminder, one can feel sorry for their abuser because of the pain that they see that their abuser in. That doesn't mean that the abuse didn't happen. It just means that the person being abused is an empathetic person. Like all that question and answer tells me is that this witness is an empathetic person, not that Kitty is deserving of empathy. Not to say that Kitty isn't deserving of empathy, but you know what I mean? Like it says everything about this witness, nothing about Kitty.
Broke one of her Waterford glasses and she didn't get upset with you. Is that correct? Ultimately, I believe you indicated how you felt about it, but when you did tell her, she didn't get upset with you.
No, in that instance, she did not get upset with me for doing that.
All right.
Everyday sheep,
Did
100%.
you intentionally break the glass?
One can be abused
No,
and an
but I
abuser.
didn't.
In
Right,
fact, that's
but
often
was it
how
an
that
accident?
happens.
Yes.
When you were smoking, were you intentionally smoking or was that an accidental act?
What?
Objection or demeanor.
Yeah,
Rephrase the question.
that's a ludicrous
When you were
question.
smoking, you did that intentionally, correct?
Oh, yes, of course.
Now, I believe you've indicated that on occasion the defendants would get sent to their room. correct?
Yes,
And
yes.
and that was when they were being disciplined.
Yes.
Did you ever get sent to your room for discipline?
They didn't have to send me to my room. I would go almost voluntarily down.
But did either of the two parents ever send you, like,
They would tell me to go to my room for a while. Yes, they did it in probably a different tone, I would say, to me than they did to them. They would just say, go down to your room.
did they ever lock you in?
No, but while I was in the basement.
All right.
How much longer is your examination?
Well, it's going to go about 10 more minutes, 10 or 15 more minutes.
All right, we'll take a recess then, ladies and gentlemen, until this afternoon. We'll take a lunch break. And what I'd like to do is, before continuing with this witness's testimony, have a hearing regarding other witnesses at 1:30. So we'll have you come back at 2 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen. Don't
Okay.
discuss this case with anyone. Don't
We
form
are
any
going to
opinions
fast
about it.
forward here.
We'll have
a
the
little
jurors
bit.
back at 2 o'clock.
So we cannot see how there is any difference whatsoever. That is any justification.
Okay.
Something I could do or would do.
Understood.
When I make the decision, you'll be made aware of it.
Thank you very much.
All right, anything else now before we have the juries come in? The witness is
All right, now we're
still on
back.
the witness stand. Would you state your name again for us, please?
Kathleen A. Simonton.
All right, you're still under oath. You may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you. Ms. Simonton, during the 2 months that you stayed with the Menendezes in 1976, I think you testified on direct examination that you sometimes went to family gatherings with other relatives. Is that correct?
Yes,
And were those relatives on your side of the family or on the Menendez side?
on the Menendez side. There was just at Maria and Pepin's house.
And those were the defendant's grandparents on
Yes.
the father's side?
Yes, yes.
And during those periods of time, did the defendants, did their behavior change when they were around their grandparents?
They were able, if I remember correctly, to go outside and play and have a good time.
Okay, I'm having a little.
They were able to go outside, if I remember correctly, and have a good time.
Did you ever see the defendants interacting with their grandparents?
They would talk to them.
Did you see any warmth or affection between the grandparents and the defendants?
Not that I can remember, but talking.
Did you see any abuse between the defendants and the grandparents?
No.
When you were there that summer, how did you interact with both of the defendants? Did you play with them?
Oh, yes, yes.
Did you hug them?
I don't remember.
Were you affectionate?
I know, well, excuse me. I know I did with Erik when he would come sit with me on the couch.
Okay, so you'd hug Erik.
I guess, and I'm not sure about Lyle. Probably, but I'm not sure.
But did you have pleasant interaction with Lyle Menendez during that summer?
Yes,
Did you ever fight with them?
not that I can recall.
Now, I believe your sister was there for the identical period of time that you were and a little bit extra. Is that correct?
Yes, she was there longer than I was. She stayed like a month after I left.
Right. And I think you indicated when I first started questioning you that Mrs. Menendez treated her differently from you.
Very, very much so.
And did she treat her better than you or worse than you?
Oh, much better than I did. I was.
Were you a little jealous of that?
No, not really. I just took care of myself.
Did you ever see your sister interact with either of the two defendants?
Oh, yes. Several, yes.
And was she pleasant to them?
Oh, very much so.
Did you ever see Mr. Menendez kiss or hug Mrs. Menendez?
Just a few occasions.
Did you ever see Mrs. Menendez smile?
If you did something pleasing to her, yes.
When you went on the trips to New York City and to Washington, D.C., did she smile during those periods of time?
Yes, I would say so.
When you were living in the house, did you have your own room or did you share a room with someone?
I shared a room with my sister.
And did the defendants have their own rooms or did they share a room?
They shared a room.
Did you ever see them both sent to their room at the same time?
No.
Did the defendants appear to get along well with each other?
Yes.
Now, I believe you testified to some sort of competition that was fostered in the family between the two defendants. Do you remember your testimony about that?
Yes.
And on occasion, this was used at bedtime.
Yes.
And so it was a competition to rush.
Yeah, so you could get to bed faster or yes, something like that.
Okay. You have two sons, right?
Yes.
Do you ever have trouble getting them to go to bed?
Protection on relatives.
Sustain.
Yeah.
Did it ever appear that the parents had trouble getting?
The point with that question is to say, like, look, every parent has their tricks to try to get their kid to do what they need them to do, right? Like, kids will dawdle when it's bedtime, kids will dawdle when it's dinner time, kids will dawdle all kinds of times when like you need them to get from A to B, and they'll go through C, D, E, F, J in that order, maybe not in that order, and then eventually get back to B. Like, I get that that's her point there, but that is a proper objection. That what this witness does with her children is completely irrelevant to what she saw the Menendez parents doing with Kyle and Erik.
Getting their
Lyle
sons
and
to go
Erik,
to
sorry.
bed, the Menendez parents?
No,
And these competitions were at bedtime in preparation for going to bed. Is that correct?
and at other times, yes.
Now, in spite of the competition, the two defendants got along well with each other. Is that correct?
Oh, I would say extremely so, yes.
Were they affectionate with each other?
Yes, I would say so, yes.
Okay, could you give me some examples of the kind of affection you saw between them?
Lyle seemed to take care of Erik, I would say.
Pardon me?
Lyle would seem to, in my memory, to take care of Erik.
And did he hug him and do things that brothers do with each other at that age?
Yes, they,
The question's a little vague, what brothers do.
Overall,
they seemed, they played together, and I'm quite frequently. Lyle talked to Erik quite frequently.
Now, did you ever see either of the two parents discipline the brothers in front of you, or was the discipline done outside of your presence?
Discipline wasn't done in our presence. Was it done in our presence? Yes. They were sent, it was done in our presence. If they were in trouble, yes. They were sent to their room, in our presence, but
All right, so the discipline was to send them to their room. Is that correct?
in most occasions.
And did you ever see the parents talking to either one of them in front of you about what they'd done wrong?
Yes, you knew what, they would tell you what you did wrong,
And would that precede them being sent to their room?
or just being yelled at.
Okay. I believe you indicated that there was control over what was eaten. Is that correct?
Yes.
The kinds of foods that were recommended or that you were told to eat, was that junk food or was that healthy food? Or how would you describe the kind of food that they told you to eat?
It varied. If you wanted a snack, they would give you if you wanted a dinner, you got what it regarded everything.
All right, but what I'm getting at is, were they making you eat potato chips and Coca-Cola? Or
When we didn't want to?
I'm
sorry.
That's okay. Were you know the difference between junk food and healthy?
Yes.
Okay. Was the kind of food that the parents were making you eat, was it the kind of food that's healthier, or was it the kind of food that was junkier?
I would say healthier.
Were you aware you talked about the fact that Erik stuttered. Did he stutter always, or was it just on occasion?
On occasions, if I remember correctly.
I'm having a real hard time here.
I'm sorry.
okay, we'll have the last question and answer read back, and then let's see if we can move that mic a little closer to you.
I will try.
Also, try to speak up a little bit.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You want me to roll the line a little bit?
Okay, why don't you try that?
And just roll up.
It's not surprising to me, given what we've heard about the way in which the brothers were upbrought. The way in which they had their upbringing. It sounds like a very tense environment, a very stressful environment. So Lyle with his bedwetting, Erik with his stutter, none of that is surprising to me, given what we have heard so far, which does seem to be pretty convincing from these witnesses. And it's so sad that they were mocked by their own parents for these things, which are both things that are very embarrassing, especially in your formative years, especially, like bedwetting beyond a certain age is particularly difficult. It's embarrassing that you don't have control over your bladder at night. And it can be embarrassing for a kid who is just trying to communicate in any kind of a situation that they start to stutter, and then their own parents are making fun of them. It's just, it's horrible. It's horrible. There was zero affection in this household from what I understand, which is just like the withholding of that affection is just another layer to all of this abuse. It's awful. That's also very interesting. I hadn't heard of that.
Okay,
that
why don't you,
connection.
let's have the
Interesting
last
too.
question and answer read back to start with.
Question, were you aware of, you talked about the fact that Erik stuttered. Did he stutter always, or was it just on occasion? Answer, on occasions, if I remember correctly.
Okay,
All right.
all right.
Were you aware that he did go to a speech pathologist at some point?
No, I was not aware of that.
But it was not it didn't happen every time he spoke. Was that correct? He didn't stutter every time he spoke?
Not that I can remember, no.
I believe you've testified about some photographs that were taken. You've identified various ones. Did Mrs. Menendez take a lot of photographs or only on special occasions, or do you recall the frequency of how she took them?
I don't remember the frequency, no.
After the summer of 1976, when you returned home, when was the next time that you saw any of the four of the Menendez family?
Together?
Yes.
I don't remember.
Did you spend any period of time with them, like say more than a day or two after 1976?
No.
Did you ever speak to any of them on the telephone between 1976 and 1989?
I want to say on probably one or two times, but specifically I don't remember.
All right, but so during that 13-year period, it would have been very rare. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And so you have no personal knowledge of what the family was doing during that period of time, because personal knowledge meaning you saw or heard.
That I saw and heard personally? No.
Yes, all right. After the deaths of the parents, did you come out to California?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to object this is irrelevant and beyond the
Thank you,
scope.
Maya. That's an interesting point.
Sustained on the lettergram.
Good clarification. So, I mean,
So when was the last?
she's definitely hitting points that I would expect her to hit here, which is, you know, this witness had testified that she and her sister, her family, they lived in Arizona. The Menendez family at this time lived in New Jersey. They spent 2 full months there this summer, in the summer of 1976. But before that point, after that point, they didn't really spend any significant amount of time with them. So there is a possibility that her testimony could be true, but that this could have been behavior circumstances that were limited to a particular point in time that just was particularly stressful, right? Like that just things were not going well with the Menendez family. And so things were coming out that were, yes, abusive, but were not an accurate reflection of the way in which they conducted family affairs before this point, after this point, right? Like it could have just been that she just happened to overlap right with that bad time with the Menendez family. I don't personally believe that based on what I have heard from other witnesses so far, that have also testified to other points in time that seems very consistent with this kind of behavior, with this kind of stress. So I don't think that that's particularly successful, but I fully expect the prosecution to be hitting these kinds of points to try to limit the scope of applicability of her testimony to the circumstances of the Menendez family.
Last time before the parents' deaths that you had actually seen either Mr. or Mrs. Menendez?
Kitty came to California, I don't remember when, with one of the boys, and I don't remember which one. And I saw her briefly one afternoon.
Do you know how many years or months it was before her death that you saw her?
Three or four, probably, years.
All right, thank you very much. I have nothing further with this witness.
Redirect examination.
You finish the pasta? Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, finish it. Yeah, eat all of it. You have my permission to eat the rest of the pasta, and that's on a
You
live
were
stream.
talking about the fact
My
that
mic is not
Diane
off,
was
so,
treated differently than
it's
you.
recorded.
Is that right?
Yes.
I love you.
And your response was that you weren't jealous of that or resentful, but that you just took care of yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, we are
And
going to
what
be
did you
hearing
mean
from
by
Diane
that?
today as well.
What was taking care of yourself in that house?
For myself, it was so I wouldn't get in trouble.
But what would you do?
I was quiet, or on occasions I would go to my room if I thought there was going to be a conflict.
Love it, Maya.
The trips that you made, excuse me, the day trips to New York and to Washington, were these just so everybody could have a good time,
I will
or
let
did they have
Mr.
another
Weitz know that
purpose?
he has to share with everyone.
They were teaching experiences too. She would teach us about the monuments and the paintings at the museums, or we went to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and she taught us what that meant.
So were these educational trips then?
I would say both, yes.
Were they more designed for pleasure and the education was incidental, or more designed for education and the pleasure was incidental, or equal?
Probably equal.
You were asked about smoking. Did you ever smoke in front of the boys?
No.
When you described what would happen when Jose would come home in terms of people lining up at the top of the stairs, and that varied based on what he knew about what happened that day. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how would he know about what happened that day?
Judge and pause rehearsal.
I'm just asking how he would know, not what he would know.
Well, if it's beyond her knowledge, it might very well call for hearsay. So let's rephrase the question.
Did you observe Kitty calling Jose regularly during the day to report what the boys were doing?
I wouldn't, well, not, if we did something, she would call him, and I knew that, yes. She told me.
And you were asked if you felt sorry for Kitty, and I think you said that you did when she was getting yelled at.
On occasions. Or, yes.
Go ahead. If you want.
Or sometimes when she was drifting.
Okay, and when you say drifting, you did the clenching of the fist?
Well, yeah, if I knew she was just like in a corner somewhere getting upset with something, sometimes I felt bad for her because I didn't know why she was getting upset. But then other times I didn't.
Other times you didn't like her for what she did to you. Is that fair to say?
Well, yeah, because of the way she yelled and belittled me.
Now, with regard to feeling sorry for her when Jose would yell at her, did this just happen once or did it happen more than once?
That he would yell at her a few
Yes.
times.
And would this take place in the kitchen and just be one sentence, or would they be prolonged arguments, or what?
It depending on what happened. Sometimes it was short and sometimes it was a little longer.
And would these be done in a public part of the house, or would they go to their room?
Sometimes in the room, sometimes in the kitchen.
When they were in their room, could you ever hear them through the door?
I could hear them. I don't remember what they said though.
Right, but you could hear the voices. They were that loud.
Oh, yeah.
And were the boys in the home at the time that this was going on?
Yeah, we were usually watching TV in the other room.
You were asked about getting punished for smoking and not getting punished for breaking the glass. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. And the distinction was made that one was intentional and one was accidental.
Yes.
Okay. Were you ever punished for things that you didn't intentionally do wrong?
Yes.
Like what?
Like the way I cleaned something, or I did a lot of that. And just things that happened during the day. If something happened that, being a 15 or whatever I did that I didn't mean to do, I would get in trouble sometimes.
you were asked if you ever saw the boys hit.
Yes.
Where was punishment usually meted out in that house for the
In their
boys?
bedroom, probably.
Where was it direct? It started in the living room and then ended up either in the living room or them going to the room.
And when it started in the living room, what kind of punishment would they be subjected to? It wasn't physical, I take it.
No,
What kind of punishment?
just being yelled at and severely reprimanded
And then they were sent to their room.
on most occasions.
And did you have any idea what went on in that room?
No,
Were you allowed to get even close enough to that room to hear?
no, we weren't allowed down the hallway.
Do you remember anything about Jose threatening the boys with a belt or anything about that type of punishment?
Oh.
The only thing I remember about a belt is the sound,
What do you mean the sound? You took your hands and pulled it apart.
the snapping sound. That's the only thing I can remember.
And who would do that?
Well, I want to say, and I shouldn't say assume, but Jose, but I can't remember.
Was it Jose's belt?
Yes, I would say so.
So is it fair to say the only memory you have is this sound?
I just remember the sound.
And was that a happy sound, a threatening sound, or?
Well, the snap of a belt isn't a happy sound, it's a threatening sound, but I just remember, I don't know why, the sound stands out in my mind. I don't know what for.
Do you think because it was frightening to you?
It's a little bit leading.
Probably.
You said that in terms of the interaction between Lyle and Erik, that you would see Lyle talk to Erik. Yes?
Yes.
And would Erik respond?
Yeah, they would have talk about anything. I mean, like what was on TV or what to do, or yeah, they would have a conversation.
Okay. So the times when they're interacting, is that when the parents are around or when the parents are gone? The sort of easy kind of
Percentage-wise,
conversation.
I would say the parents are, or Kitty was out of the room.
And if one or more of the parents was in the room, was the mood different?
It was more quiet.
When you went to restaurants and they told you what to order, was it because you were asking to eat potato chips and drink Coke for dinner?
No, we didn't. No.
So what kind of food did you ask for? What kind of food did you want to eat?
Objection irrelevant.
I believe the district attorney asked the question, Your Honor, regarding.
Objections overruled.
Well, we just.
If you remember.
I want no.
Questions at all?
Yeah, I remember. Can I? I was told we went to this one restaurant and Jose, I guess, liked caviar, and I didn't like caviar.
Yeah,
And I didn't
that's
want to
kind
try
of a
caviar.
mature taste.
I don't like fish. I've never liked fish in my life.
That's kind of a mature taste for
And I was told I would try it.
15-year-old.
And did you?
Well, yeah, I was told to try it
Why wouldn't you just say, no, I don't like fish. I've never liked fish.
because Jose told me to try it. That I didn't know. One didn't know what one didn't like without trying it.
But you knew you didn't like fish. Why didn't you refuse?
Because he told me to eat it and try it. I didn't.
What
I
would be
tried
the
it and I told him I didn't
consequence
like
of
it.
refusing?
If he told you to do something, did you feel that you could refuse what he told you to do?
If I wanted to get in more trouble.
Good question. Decent answer.
I've nothing further.
Anything else?
Like there was just no going against what
All right,
Jose
thank you.
said.
Sit down, you're
Friendly.
excused.
Thank you.
Call your next witness.
Okay. So now on to the next one. So we are going to get into the next witness, who is the sister of Kathleen Simonton, Diane Vander Molen. Let me just pull her up really quick here. Okay. All right. So yeah, this is that witness was not quite as brutal as the prior witness, the one that was, he was really going into intense abuse. So it's good that it's a good strategy by the defense. Actually, let me do this real quick. It's a good strategy by the defense to start with the prior witness and then to come to this witness afterwards, because if we had heard from this witness before, I kind of would have been like, okay, like, so they were tough, they were strict, they had their issues, but like abusive, I don't know, maybe not. But hearing this testimony after the prior witness, it's like the listener has already been basically conditioned by the prior witness that laid a very crazy kind of foundation for what life was like in that household. So anyway, so that's going to be very interesting now to hear from Diane. You could tell on cross-examination, the prosecution was really trying to make this point of like, was your sister Diane treated differently than you were, which I don't know that helps the prosecution. Like, I don't quite understand at this point why she was kind of hammering in on that. Maybe that will come across in the cross-examination of that sister, because we've already heard from the prior witness, the prior cousin, the first cousin that we heard from, that he was treated differently than the brothers, and that Lyle sometimes questioned, like, why are you being treated differently than I am? Why are you sometimes not getting punished? Why am I getting punished for things that you've done? So like we've already heard about the disparate treatment between these various individuals. And in some respects, it almost made it worse because you have an older cousin who is doing things that are getting into trouble. And then knowing that his much younger cousin is getting the heat for it in a very, very, very strong way. And it's so psychologically twisted, because you know that he knows what's happening, and that he's the one that's responsible for that, and that the one that is actually being punished had really nothing to do with it other than just being there, happening to be there at the time. So I don't know what the prosecution, what Pam Bozanich was doing here in cross-examination by saying like, oh, well, your sister Diane was treated differently than you, right? But maybe that will be a little bit clearer when Diane is actually on the stand, because maybe there are going to be I would expect there now to be some questions from Diane about like, well, you didn't see this and that. Well, you weren't treated this way or that way. So like, maybe these other witnesses that say that these things happened are not to be believed. And maybe you're, someone, and you have a more accurate picture of what this family was like. I don't know. We'll see. Let's maybe hear from her and then we'll find out together.
Stand over behind the court reporter. Come on in, please. Right in through the door.
Raise your right hand. Swear that the testimony you may give and the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
And Tara, thank you so much for this comment. Trigger warning for anyone and everyone that has a hard time with hearing about abuse, if based on your prior experiences or any other reason. Just want to reinstate the trigger warning here, because some time has passed since I mentioned it at the beginning of the stream. We are talking about abuse, sometimes some physical in nature, even though the prosecution is trying to make it seem like it's not physical in nature. But there have been some instances that I have disagreed with them on that. Definitely some emotional abuse, definitely some SA allegations. So there's a lot to be triggered by here. So if that is particularly difficult for you, do what you need to do to take care of your mental health. And you can come see us, on the back end of it. Okay, but here is Diane. This is the sister of Kathleen Simonton. This is Diane Vander. I will change the chat pin so that everybody can see the spelling there and know exactly who's testifying. And let's get going.
Could you tell us your full name and spell your last name?
Diane Marie Vander Molen, V as in Victor, ANDER MOLEN.
Ms. Van Molen, are you a little nervous here today?
Very.
We have a family tree over here, and I'm wondering if you could tell me where you fit on this. Okay, can you see the chart?
Yes.
And you see your name? And where are you?
I'm the fourth child of Joan and Arnold.
Down here, where I'm
Yes.
pointing? Is Kathy, the witness who just testified, your sister?
Yes,
And is Alan Anderson your cousin?
yes.
And how old are you?
I am 34 years old.
So does that make you 9 years older than Lyle and 12 years older than Erik?
Yes,
Is that yes?
yes.
Did you spend various periods of time with Kitty and Jose Menendez?
Yes, I did.
And were they your aunt and uncle?
Yes.
When was the first time that you stayed with them?
1976 for the
Eh.
summer.
For the summer? And when was the second time?
1978.
And that
Also-
was,
Also for the summer for a little bit longer that time.
okay. And the next time?
1979 briefly.
Briefly is,
My friend Karen and I came up for a visit.
briefly is how long?
Oh, about 2 weeks.
And did you spend time with them again?
Yes.
And when was that?
I lived with them from the beginning of June 1982 until July 1983.
When you were first invited to stay with them in 1976, how old were you then?
I was 16 when I arrived, and I turned 17 while I was with them.
We're going to have further hearings.
Could we?
I was 16 when I arrived.
Why don't you just move a little closer to the microphone? Just move yourself in a little closer if you can, knowing your physical. We
Are
can
you
move the
pregnant?
microphone as
Miss
well.
Van Molen,
Yes.
are you pregnant? Okay.
Very,
move the
very.
Very pregnant. Oh man.
Thank you.
When you were first invited to stay with them, were you sent there or is this something you wanted to do?
It was something that I wanted to do.
And why did you want to go there for a whole summer?
I had looked forward to it for a few years, and it
Why?
was. I had been told a lot about Kitty and Jose and Lyle and Erik and their family being very special to our family, and had met them a few years prior, and had been told that Jose had said that it would be okay for us to come out and visit, and looked very much forward to doing so.
And was that exciting for you?
Oh, very, yes.
Now, when you say that they were special to your family, how do you mean?
Sustain.
When you first went to stay with them, were you treated well?
In 1976, yes.
And did that change over the period of time that you went to visit them?
Very much so.
And did Jose change during that period of time? Or did he stay the same?
Pretty much the same, only more so.
More
More
what?
intense, driven, arrogant.
And what about Kitty? Did she stay the same or did she change?
She changed very much.
And how did she change?
In 1976, she became like a mentor to me during that time period. I felt special with her during that time. By 1982-83 visit, I got to the point where I was afraid to come upstairs from my bedroom because I wasn't sure what was going to happen, because it seemed like I could do nothing right.
And if you did something wrong, what would Kitty do?
She would She would fly into rages, immense rages.
How would she look when she flew into these rages?
Her arms would
Would
be
you
out.
stand up if you can?
Yeah, of course she was not pregnant. Her arms would be out to here. Of course,
Fists upraised, Your Honor, for the record.
and her teeth would be like this, and she would be coming at you like that.
When she would be coming at you, how close would she get?
She would approach me at times. Okay. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize.
Is
it frightening to you
so nervous.
today to think about that?
It was, yeah, it was, and I recall that when I talk about it.
Okay. How close would she come to you when she did this?
She could get into my face, and sometimes it would start from a brief distance away, but she would move towards me as her anger
Yikes.
was flying towards me also.
Is this something that happened once or twice, or is this something that happened more often?
Oh, it happened more than once or twice.
3 times?
It was quite regular.
And what's quite regular to you? Is that once a month? Once a week?
Maybe a couple times a week.
And what types of things would trigger these rages?
Gosh, if I hadn't performed up to her expectations, or if I'd come home late.
And when you say performed up to her expectations, what do you mean?
Sustained.
When she would get angry at you, would she just talk about what it is that you did wrong, or would she talk about you as a person?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
What kinds of, would these fits or rages be in front of the boys?
Sometimes.
And what types of things would she say to you?
She would attack me as a person, and let me know in no uncertain terms that she was very capable of marching me downstairs and tossing my belongings out on the street and not caring that I was related to her.
Jeez.
And would she make you feel anything about yourself in terms of your own personal characteristics?
Oh, yeah. Myself.
Sustained.
Would she say anything about your personal characteristics?
Same objection.
You have to lay a better foundation.
Would she, in these rages, which took place in front of the boys, would she say anything about you personally?
She attacked my character as a human being. I mean,
during your first visit in 1976, you took a trip to New York and a trip to Washington, D.C. Is that correct?
Yes.
With the family. Was that enjoyable?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Over the period of time that you were there, you've said Jose became more intense and Kitty changed dramatically. Can you tell me what kinds of changes you saw in Kitty?
Both, when I was there in 76, it seemed that there was still, Kitty was able to still enjoy herself and be herself, both inside the home and outside the home. I also saw similar characteristics with Jose. By 1982 and 83 visit, there was a complete change in who they were inside the home when no one was around, and who they would be to others outside the home.
Who would they be inside the home?
Objection irrelevant.
No, that's totally relevant.
Sustained.
Can you describe their personality? Can you describe Kitty's personality characteristics inside the home? On the last visit, things you observed.
Same objection.
All right, you're asking her to describe the demeanor of Mrs. Menendez in the presence of the defendants?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor, I am.
All right. Do you understand the question?
Yes.
Could you describe it?
Kitty was quite frustrated and seemed to be immensely trying to keep up with what she considered to be her job, which was organizing the boys' schedules and keeping up with what was given to her from Jose to do each day. And there wasn't, in 76, there were moments when we could talk and relax, and there wasn't any of that by 82, 83. Just always frustrated and unhappy.
Were the rages more frequently in 82 and 83 than they were in 76?
Oh, immensely, yeah.
Was Kitty affectionate with the boys?
More so with Erik than with Lyle.
Okay, and what would you see her do with Erik? Let me start.
Okay, I think
Was there a change in how she reacted toward Erik between 76 and 82? Or was it the same? Was there a change?
She became more of his tutor.
Was she affectionate with him to the same degree?
No.
What did you see with regard to her affection toward Erik in the earlier visits?
For example, there was one time when I tried to hug Erik one time, and she told me that I wasn't supposed to hug him, that he needed to grow up, that he was being too much of a baby.
Oh my God.
Which visit was this?
82.
So he would have been 11 years old?
Yes.
Did you see her hug the kids?
Not that time, not in 82, 83 visit.
Did she hug them? Did she hug Erik earlier?
Mm-hmm. Yes, she did, when putting them to bed.
And what about Lyle? Did you see her hug Lyle?
Not during the 82, 83 visit. There was more animosity between the two.
Would you see her hug him on the earlier visits?
Just when putting him to bed occasionally.
And did she speak to them gently using pet names or?
No, there weren't no pet names.
Kit Kat, she does come across as very truthful.
Was she
very nervous, very
caring
truthful.
of them in terms of if they got injured?
No, they were supposed to be tough.
Were they allowed to cry?
Crying was considered a weakness.
Was that even for you? Or were you?
I'd say in general, showing emotion in that household was considered a great weakness that you didn't want to display.
And what would happen if the boys would cry?
Gosh. They'd either be sent to their room or left alone.
Was there a difference between what the family did in private, and I'm talking particularly about the later visits, a difference between the way they would behave in private and the way they would behave in public?
Are you referring to Kitty and Jose?
Yes.
There was a terrific difference between private and public.
And what was the difference? Let's do Kitty first. What was the difference in Kitty's public versus her private performance?
Let's have the question read back, please.
I feel like this is relevant
What was the
because
difference as to Kitty first? What was the difference in Kitty's public?
it gets to what other people would have observed of them outside
Be a
of the
little more
home.
specific when you're talking about performance,
Thank you.
please.
What was Kitty's behavior like in the home versus in public?
At home, she was very harried when no one was around, and generally unhappy and just never could quite keep up and frustrated all the time. In public, she would put on a facade, a personhood of who she believes she should appear to be as the
Objection sustained as to the entire
Yeah,
answer.
'cause you
As
can't quite speculate what she thought
conclusion,
Kitty
and
was
the
thinking.
entire answer is stricken.
How would you said at home she'd appear frustrated and harried, etc. Would she demonstrate her
Okay.
temper at home?
Okay. Yes.
And when she went out in public, did she appear harried and frustrated and demonstrate her temper?
No.
And what was Jose like in the home versus in public? First, what was his behavior like at home?
He was in non-questionable control of the household. And he was, he would laugh in a arrogantly teasing way, but he'd be humiliating and belittling to the point of being cruel at times.
And what about in public? Did he demonstrate any of those behaviors in public?
No.
Were you afraid of making mistakes in that home?
Sustained.
What would be the consequences of making a mistake in that home?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
If you made a
little bit of a
mistake,
generic
how
question.
would Kitty treat you?
There you go.
All right, you have to lay a better foundation as to the presence of the defendants and nature of the conduct.
Were there times when you were living in the home, particularly directed at the later visits, where you would make a mistake and Kitty would react to that in front of the boys?
Yes.
And can you tell me what would happen?
Objection Vegas to time.
Sustained.
In the 1982-83 visit, did this ever happen?
Oh, yes.
Did it happen frequently?
Yes.
And what would Kitty do in front of the boys during the 1982-83 visit if you made a mistake?
If it wasn't too bad, it would be throwing things around and as she was yelling at me, just slamming things down while talking to me,
That's if it
yelling
wasn't
at me
bad.
about what it was and how could I do this and how stupid it was.
And if it was something really bad?
It would be the rage that I have already described to you, beyond control.
How old were you in 1982?
I was 23.
Was that rage still frightening to you?
Oh, yes, very. I lived in fear of it, to be honest with you.
Would there be times during the last visit where Jose would go to Erik's room before dinner
Yes,
and meet with him privately?
yes.
And after those meetings, what would Erik be like when he came out?
Jose would state that Erik was not feeling well and that he was not able to eat his dinner at that time and that he would eat later.
And did you see times where Lyle and Jose would have talks?
Yes.
And where would these talks take place?
Frequently downstairs. This is during 82, correct?
Yeah.
Frequently downstairs in the basement with Lyle on a stool and Jose standing over him.
How close would Jose stand to him?
He would be right here up against him.
Indicating approximately a foot away?
Generally, yes.
And could you tell what it was they were these discipline sessions or were they just talking about things?
It was understood that when Jose was speaking to Lyle or either of the boys that they were to be left alone and you didn't intrude.
How long would these talks in the basement go on?
An hour or 2 hours.
And is this something that happened just once while you were there?
No, it was frequently.
And what is frequent?
And it was serious. It could be once a week.
Okay. And that's in the 82-83 visit you're talking about.
Yes.
Did talks like this take place on earlier visits?
Yes, but not for quite as long.
And starting in, say, 1976, when Lyle's 8, are these similar types of talks taking place?
Yes.
And how long would they last at that age? You said they were shorter.
Yeah, they could be shorter in length up to about an hour, but they wouldn't probably go to 2 hours at that point.
And at some point between 76 and 82, they went to 2 hours.
Yes.
And would he have talks with him in other locations? Dinner table, living room?
Always at the dinner table.
And what was it like at the dinner table?
Sustained.
During the 1982-83 visit, what was it like at the dinner table?
An intellectual drill in a rapid quiz-like fashion.
Was this every night?
If Jose were home, yes.
And who would be being drilled?
Generally, Lyle. Erik would try to answer, but since Lyle's 3 years older, Erik had a hard time keeping up.
And what happened if you didn't know the answer?
Your intelligence was attacked.
Now, did these dinner table conversations take place on earlier visits?
Yes.
And you said you were there in 76, 78, and 80. Did they take place on all 3 of those visits?
Yes.
What would happen if the boys cried?
Why don't you be more specific?
Okay. Was there some objective, some purpose in keeping the boys from crying? Some goal?
Sustained.
Did they ever indicate verbally, either Kitty or Jose, why it is you weren't supposed to cry?
Crying is a weakness.
And they weren't supposed to be weak?
And weaknesses are not allowed.
Did you drive with Kitty ever?
Very often.
And how was her driving?
We drove through the entire state of Pennsylvania at 95 miles an hour with the boys in the car.
Whoa.
That was one incident. Was that an exception?
That was by that time, that was only 1976, and I had already accustomed myself to her style of driving at that time.
And
yes, that was to answer your question.
It was the way she usually drove?
Yes.
Was it frightening to drive with her?
It could be at times, yes.
Did it appear that either of the boys cared what their dad thought about them?
They both cared very, very much.
And how could you tell that?
They were always seeking his approval.
And when Lyle would be having these talks with his dad, what would he look like physically?
His shoulders he would be in this type of a position with his head down and being very serious and looking sad.
Shoulders hunched forward? Is that what you did? And head down?
Yes.
Hands in lap?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Was Jose home most weekends?
Jose was...
or did it vary?
It varied, and it varied with the visits, because his positions had changed.
Okay. Was he home most weekends in 76?
Actually, he was gone frequently during 76.
And what about 78, 80, and 82?
He was home on more weekends during those visits.
And was there a routine pattern over this entire period of time in terms of how weekend days would be spent? In terms of Jose and the boys?
Yes, very much so.
And what was the routine?
If Jose were home, he when he arrived, he would immediately take the boys out while they were involved in tennis. This was more later visits than the earlier visits. And they would drill immediately when he got home. He would change and they'd be on the court. And but you're only asking me during the week, right?
That was the week. Let's do the weekend now. Say Saturdays. What would Saturdays be like? What would the pattern be?
Sustained.
you said it was most common in the later visits, 80 and 82?
Yeah.
That he would be home?
Yes.
Okay. And so during those 2 visits, was the pattern on Saturday the same?
Yes.
And was the pattern on Saturday during the other visits the same? It's just that he wasn't home as much.
Correct.
So what was the pattern?
They would get up first thing in the morning and they'd be on the court. They'd be drilling, and they would take a break after a couple of hours and get either some liquid, and then after a couple hours they'd have something to eat, and then they'd be back on the court.
Okay, so they would be drilled for a couple of hours,
Minimum, yeah.
2 to 3 hours.
With each set.
What do you mean with each set? With each boy?
Between breaks.
Okay. And between the first and the second set of drilling, between the first 2 hours and the second 2 hours, they'd take a break. Is that right?
Yes.
And how long a break would they take?
They'd storm into the house and storm right back out, is how I remember it.
10 minutes, half hour?
About 10 minutes, maybe.
And so then they would have the second 2-hour session.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
And then would that be the end of the tennis? Or
No, they could easily go all day long into the evening.
And this was taking place even in 1976? Or
I don't recall in 76 as much. Okay. And they were still in swimming also at that time.
And after they spent all this time on the tennis court, what would they do? Would this be late afternoon, early evening by the time they came in?
Yes.
Okay. And what would they do when they came in?
They would come in and I'm not sure what point they grabbed something to eat. Then they would head upstairs for showers.
Okay. Would they take showers individually or together?
Together.
And was this true on all of the visits, including the 82 to 83 visit?
Including 82, 83 visit, yes.
And after they all showered together, what would they do next?
I would see them come out, all 3 of them each of them in their robes, and the 3 of them would go into the den area where they would sit, which was adjoining the master bedroom, and the 3 of them would sit on the floor with Jose, teaching them generally about history, specifically Roman history, and telling them of the importance to know history and why and other things related to history.
How long would these talks go on for?
An hour or 2, generally until it was time for them to go to bed.
The boys looked like they were having a good time?
They looked like they were intent on learning what their father was trying to teach them.
And I've just marked 4 photographs.
164, 5, 6, and 7. Vander Molen, showing you what I've marked now as 164. You recognize that photograph?
Yes.
And who's in that photograph?
This is Kathy in the corner. And
Is Kathy your sister?
Kathy is my sister. This is myself. And I know this child, I can't think of him.
Okay, so there's an unidentified child in there.
Who's on my lap. And this is Lyle and Erik.
And so if Kathy's there,
That
is
was my
this,
birthday.
this is your birthday?
I think so. Yeah.
What month is your birthday?
My birthday is July 2nd.
So if Kathy's there, is this the 76th visit?
Yes.
Showing you what I've now marked as 165. Do you recognize that picture?
Yes. Yes.
And who's in that?
That's myself and Lyle and Erik.
And is this the same occasion?
Yes.
Showing you what I've marked as 166 and ask if you recognize that photograph.
That's Kitty and myself.
You can hold it.
That's Kitty and myself.
And when was that?
It looks like the 76 visit also.
And while you were living there on any of the visits, Did they have a ferret as a pet?
There was, yes, I believe they did throughout the visits. Chippers 1, 2, and 3.
That was the ferret's names? Chippers 1, 2, and 3?
Yes,
Showing you what I
Creative.
marked as 167.
that's a ferret.
That's a ferret.
That's one of the chippers.
Okay.
If this was 76, it would be chipper 1.
Was the ferret kept
Even like the pet's
in the
name is like
house, or are
impersonal.
these pets that you put out in the backyard, or what?
The ferret was kept inside the house.
And was the ferret trained to go to the bathroom in a litter box or something like
And-
that?
No, none of the ferrets were. They went to the bathroom wherever they ended up.
Oh god,
being
that's gross.
Is that anywhere in the house?
Anywhere in the house, yes.
Ugh.
Did the boys behave differently when they were just with you as opposed to when they were with their parents?
Yes, they did.
How did they behave when they were just with you?
It seems that it was the only time that I saw them actually behave as children, as boys. They were much less competitive when it was just the three of us. They were nice to each other, nicer. We relaxed. We talked about things that weren't talked about when we weren't by ourselves, such as hopes and desires and dreams that they had themselves.
These were things that they couldn't talk about or didn't talk about with their family, their own hopes and dreams?
Sustain.
Would they talk about their hopes and dreams in front of their parents?
Generally speaking, their roles were being given to them.
That didn't really respond.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken as non-responsive.
Yeah.
When they would be around their parents, who would pick the topic of conversation?
Jose.
You already indicated that the boys were not encouraged to show emotions, is that correct?
Correct.
Was that a goal to be achieved, not be able to show your emotions?
Yes.
Did the family take pictures?
Yes.
Who took pictures?
When I was there, I took a lot of them or handed my camera to someone. Otherwise,
Did they
I
both
think
take
it was,
pictures?
yes.
One of them, or? If you remember.
I don't recall.
They have a Polaroid camera?
Yes.
Did they have a movie camera?
Yes.
And
Movie
who
camera.
would use the movie camera?
Jose.
That's funny.
And what
Funny
types
way
of
to
things would he
describe it.
film?
A movie
He
camera.
filmed the boys.
Doing what?
I recall them doing sports. I can't remember what else right now.
When Jose wasn't home, where would the boys sleep?
In which visit?
Start in 76. If you remember,
Generally speaking, in 76, I remember putting them to sleep in their beds. Sometimes they slept with Kitty.
and through your later visits, did they continue to sometimes sleep with Kitty?
Yes, they did. And they'd argue over whose turn it was.
And did this continue into the last visit in 1982, 1983?
Yes, it did.
And at that time, the boys would have been 14 and 11?
Yes. Then they turned 12 and 15.
That's weird. That is very weird.
Did you observe anything unusual that happened when Lyle would go to take a bath? Just yes or no?
Yes.
And when was this?
During the 82, 83 visit.
So again, where he's 14.
Yes.
What would happen when he would go take a bath?
After he would be in the bathroom, Kitty would tell me that she had to go help him wash his hair.
Would she go into the bathroom?
Yes.
And how long would she be in there?
Until she would help him finish up his bath and they'd come out.
5 minutes, 10 minutes?
I could, about 15 minutes.
Did you observe Kitty helping the boys with their homework?
Yes,
And would this have been in the 1982, 83 visit?
yes.
And how is it that she would help the boys with their homework?
She would sometimes sit and do it with them. Sometimes she would do it while they were out practicing their tennis.
So she would do their homework for them sometimes?
Yes.
During the times when she would work with them, what were those episodes like?
Sometimes she would get frustrated with them if they asked for help, and she'd end up taking over the homework herself.
And would she ever say anything to them about?
She would, she'd ask them how they could be such a dummy. Lyle and Erik use their intelligence. She would yell that at them quite frequently. And then if they still didn't get it, that's when she started calling them dummy.
Did they have any friends come over and visit during any of the visits you were there? Were other neighborhood children in the house?
I didn't see any neighborhood children, no.
And was there a particular cousin who was close to Erik who would come visit?
Yes, Andy.
And other than Andy's visits, did you see any other friends or any other relatives stay in the house?
No.
Did Erik and Andy appear to be close?
Yes.
Was privacy something that was valued in this house?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained as to the form of the question.
Did you see
Basically ask it another
any
way.
instances in which there was a disrespect for privacy shown?
Yes.
Same objection, Your Honor, with the striking answer.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Did you ever see a situation in which Kitty went into Lyle's room and read his letters?
Yes, I did. And I was with her when she did that.
Your Honor, objection with the strike as being irrelevant.
Overruled. We have a foundation as to time, please.
82, 83 visit.
During the 82, 83 visit, did Lyle get a girlfriend?
No, I asked about that one time, and Kitty said that there would be time for the boys for Lyle specifically, to be concerned about that some other time.
All right, objection is sustained. The answer is stricken after the word no.
Did
Jury, unhear
Lyle
that.
get stuffed animals?
Many, yes.
When you say many, are you talking about 2 or 3? Or?
No, he had at least a dozen or more.
And does this include the 82, 83 visit when he's 14 and 15?
Yes, that's specifically what I'm remembering.
Would you see him playing with his animals?
Yes, he animated his animals, especially Cookie Monster.
And what type of playing would go on? Was he having them sing and dance, or what was
No,
happening?
they bombed each other in groups. Bombed each other, and Cookie Monster would threaten more towards Erik. Yeah.
Was it?
All right, we'll take a recess when the jurors wants a break. So we'll take a recess and we'll resume at 1:45. Don't discuss this case with anyone or form any final opinions about it, and we'll resume at 1:45.
There's been testimony about that. He said he brings the testimony.
Well, number one, the people did not specifically object to the testimony regarding the swimming or the nature of that activity on grounds of relevancy. And now the defense is offering this film. I haven't seen it, and the people have not seen the entirety of it.
We've seen enough.
All right. Well, she just told me she didn't see it all.
She said she didn't even.
Counsel, I heard her say that she didn't see it all, and that's all I'm saying. She hasn't seen the entirety of it. The objection is on the grounds of relevancy. Is that correct? Do you want to articulate it further as to?
Yeah, all of proof is that they took pictures of the child swimming back and forth and driving. And it seems to be irrelevant or unnecessary to show this particular movie to the jury, that's all.
Your objection is it's cumulative, or? All right, I'll have to see it, and I'll do it at a more appropriate time. It's 4:00. I want to continue with the examination of this witness. How much more do you have? Okay, and I don't know how you propose, if this was to be played, how you propose to play it.
We're going to fast
VCR.
forward.
Can do that right now.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, there we go.
Ms. Vander Molen, was there an incident in 1976 in which Lyle Menendez asked you to help him?
Yes, there was.
Where did this take place?
In my bedroom downstairs in the basement
What
in
time
Muncie.
I'm sorry.
In Muncie.
In Muncie. What time of day was it?
It was nighttime.
And what happened?
We had all been down, Lyle and Erik and I had been downstairs, and the boys had been called up to get ready for bed. I stayed and went into my bedroom. And a while later, Lyle came down, and he was asking if he could, I thought he was there to say goodnight. And he started asking me if he could sleep down there because Kathy had already gone and there was 2 single beds.
Okay, and what did you tell him?
Initially, pretty much just brushed him off because I wasn't taking him seriously.
And what happened next?
He proceeded to indicate to me by touching himself down and saying that his dad and him had been touching each other down there.
Oh my God.
And what did he ask you to do?
He wanted to sleep down there.
And what did you do?
I went and got Kitty and brought her downstairs and told her what was going on.
How did Lyle seem this time? Was this a joke? Or did he
No, he was serious.
And what happened when Kitty came down?
She didn't believe me.
Did you tell her?
Yes, I told her what I believed to be going on, what Lyle was indicating to me. And she immediately, I don't remember that she said anything to me, just that I knew that she did not believe me. And she took Lyle and brought him back upstairs.
When you say she took him, did she physically grab him?
She took him by the arm and brought him back upstairs with her.
And did you ever discuss the incident with Lyle anymore?
No, it wasn't ever discussed after that.
He probably figured he couldn't tell her because she would just tell Kitty.
All right, people wish to examine?
Yes,
Whoa.
Ms. Vander Molen, do you remember giving a statement about this incident on January the 15th of 1992?
Yes,
And who did you give the statement to about this?
to Leslie and Abramson and to Joe Lansing.
And at the time that you gave the statement, did you indicate to them that Lyle had gestured to himself?
I believe I motioned about the touching. I'm not sure what you're meaning by that, though.
Well, in the report it indicates that all she, meaning you, knows is that he made some comment about Jose and touching. And the next part of the report is that you went and got Kitty.
Right.
Is that what you told the defense attorneys in January of 92?
I told them,
I'm going to object to this because I don't think this is maybe cross-examination, but I don't think this is appropriate for a commission.
We'll roll up for a minute.
okay. I discussed that it was regarding touching, and at the same time that I discussed that, I indicated so by doing that in their presence.
And where did you touch yourself?
Down, basically right here, since I'm not in.
About your genitals?
Yes.
All right. And you told the defense attorneys that in January of 92?
I verbalized touching, and I motioned by doing so with my hand, but I don't know what was written. So
And you have a clear recollection today of Lyle doing that?
yes,
And do you remember telling the defense attorneys that you were never really sure what it was about?
that's what I convinced myself of afterwards, that I must have been mistaken because of the way that it was handled.
What exactly did Lyle say to you?
That I don't remember exact words. I just remember that it was regarding he and Jose touching each other, and it was down there.
You know, when you spoke to the defense attorneys, all you said was a comment about Jose and touching. Okay?
Indicating down there.
Right.
What page is that now?
Pardon?
What page?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's page 4, it's not numbered. We know.
Okay. What?
The last paragraph that you want.
Okay.
Beginning of the next page.
I know I read it, I just can't find it at this point.
The sentence that I'm referring to specifically starts, all she knows is that he made some comment about moving and touching.
That's on the 5th page.
That's on the floor.
I all she knows, perhaps, is referring to the fact that I don't remember exact words.
Now, did you have any impression about how recently this had occurred in Lyle's life?
That it had been, it was not, it was something that I didn't get the impression that it just happened, but that it was happening.
Right, but he didn't verbalize anything more than he wanted to stay with you?
Right. Because of this, because he was afraid.
Well, did he say he was afraid? Or
No, that's my impression.
All right, so he asked to sleep with you, and you said no, and then in response to that, he indicated to you that something.
I was pretty much ignoring him. I was not taking him seriously until he became serious.
All right, and then you didn't ever. Now, when's the first time you ever told anyone about this?
Lord, I'm going to object to this. This is impeachment if it's valid.
Well, the only problem is, normally you would be correct, but the only problem is that this is an interview conducted by the two defense lawyers. There's no third-party witness available to deal with the interview you conducted, so I'm giving the prosecution latitude in this regard.
Well, there was nobody present for Dr. Oziel's interviews, and he was free to make up anything he liked on the witness stand.
Dr. Oziel's interviews with whom?
With the defendant.
Well, I don't know if that's quite analogous. I kind of think it isn't, counsel. And I'm sure your smiling remark indicates that you agree with me. So that's why I'm permitting the prosecution to go into this. You conducted an interview without any third-party witness present, and now you're seeking to introduce the testimony relating to this, and it's very difficult for the prosecution to deal with that since they'd have to call you as witnesses. That's why I'm permitting the prosecution to do this. Go ahead.
Who's the first
that's
person
kind of
you
fair.
ever told about this?
Jill Lansing.
She started to say.
Yeah.
Besides Kitty herself, I mean.
Right, you told Kitty and then you told Miss Lansing, and between 1976 and 1992, you didn't tell anyone else. Is that
No,
correct?
that's correct.
All right, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, the counsel wish to argue the matter.
Your Honor, it's our position that this is admissible on several grounds. One, of course, is fresh complaint. I think there can be no question that it was directed at something that was going on. He didn't want to go upstairs that night out of fear. So he's not reporting something that happened in a substantial period of time before. The second is the state of mind with regard to what Lyle knew about his father, what his experiences were, so he's not likely to have forgotten, and was a part of what was happening to him in the last week when his brother tells him he's been molested, and why that is believable to Lyle.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is important.
I throw in a few sections at the end.
As long as it's not unconscionably long.
All right. A couple of additional grounds. The fresh complaint theory is for the non-hearsay purpose, and we cited the Brown case, which also indicates that the non-verbal conduct that she explained would be relevant on fresh complaint theory. The second basis is under Evidence Code Section 1202, which talks about evidence relevant to impeaching a hearsay declarant. And the court will recall that the prosecution elicited from Dr. Oziel that the Menendez brothers did not complain about sexual abuse to him in his sessions of October 31st and November 2nd. Evidence Code Section 1202 says, any other evidence offered to attack or support the credibility of a hearsay declarant is admissible if it would have been admissible had the declarant been a witness at the hearing. So in other words, it's our theory that the hearsay declarants in this case are the brothers. The statement put into evidence through Oziel was that they did not complain on those two dates. If they were testifying as witnesses under this section, we would be entitled to elicit a prior inconsistent statement that they did in fact complain at a time prior to the time that they maintained their silence, according to the prosecution's theory. So under 1202, I think the complaint would be admissible to support the credibility of the declarant. And then lastly, or actually two more arguments. 11 Evidence Code section 1241 says, evidence of a statement is not made inadmissible by the hearsay rule if the statement A is offered to explain, qualify, or make understandable conduct of the declarant, and B was made while the declarant was engaged in such conduct. So our theory would be that the verbal complaint is admissible under 1241 to explain the conduct of touching himself and requesting that he be with the witness.
I'm going to fast forward a little bit.
And then lastly, under evidence code statement,
More that
to qualify as a fresh complaint, the court would permit it, not offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but just the fact that the statement was made. And are we ready to proceed otherwise?
We are now.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me, there was one other thing.
Yes.
This should, it's also our opinion, this should not be in front of the Erik Menendez jury. It only goes to the present complaint, allowing anything up to Erik Menendez.
And I would object to that because the fact that they elicited from Dr. Azil that there was no complaint in either way about sexual molestation, the fact that they're charged with conspiracy, the fact that they're charged with premeditation and planned murder, the fact that Dr. Briere was challenged on the notion that abuse is made up. I think they put the defendants in the same basket and they're both entitled to the jury hearing this evidence.
Well, it's a statement made by Lyle Menendez as to a complaint relating to him. And
okay, we're gonna fast forward a little bit more again. I want to get to where the jury is in here.
You can remember
for the testimony here.
There was one.
Back and forth here.
The jury.
A while later.
The jury panel's in. We have about 10 minutes yet to go today. And all our jurors are back now. You may resume with the examination of the witness.
Yes.
Was there an incident in 1976 while you were staying with the Menendez family involving Lyle in a conversation that you had with him?
Yes.
And what time of day was this?
It was night.
And what had you been doing?
Lyle and Erik and I had been downstairs. I'm sorry. Lyle, Erik, and I
this is in front of the
been
jury.
downstairs playing ping pong.
To clarify, so she's going to talk about the same thing that we just heard. That was previously a mini hearing outside of the presence of the jury where they were going through it to make sure that this was testimony that is properly going to be admitted. Turns out the judge ended up admitting it. So that was a big win for the defense, because this is really going to play pretty convincingly for the jury to understand that there was abuse happening.
And the two boys were called upstairs to get ready for bed.
Who called them upstairs?
Jose.
And what happened next?
I stayed and went into my bedroom, which was downstairs.
Is that in the basement?
Yes.
Okay.
And a while later, Lyle came down. I believed he was there to tell me goodnight.
Okay. You say a while later. How much longer?
Within the hour.
And he came down?
And he came downstairs and he started asking if he could spend the night in the other bed. We had two twin beds and Kathy had left by then.
So there was an empty bed?
Right.
Okay. So he's asking if he can spend the night in the bed. And what did you do?
I did not. I pretty much ignored him and brushed him off at first. I thought he was just goofing around.
He's an 8-year-old kid and you didn't take it seriously?
Right.
Okay. And what happened after that?
He became more serious and indicated to me that he was afraid of not sleeping downstairs.
Why?
because he and his dad had been touching each other, and he indicated that it was in his genital area.
And so why did he want to sleep downstairs?
Did he say anything as to why?
I don't recall what
All
he
right,
said.
your next question then.
When he said this, did he seem like he was kidding around, or did he seem
No,
serious?
he was serious.
And what did you do?
I went and got Kitty and brought her downstairs and told her what was going on.
You took it seriously enough to go get Kitty then?
Yes.
Overruled.
Yes, I did.
And did you tell Kitty what Lyle had told you?
Yes, I told her what he had indicated to me, what he was telling me, what he was showing me.
How did she look? Did she look shocked, or did she show any emotion?
She showed that she did not believe me.
What did she do?
Kind of in a there's a look that she got when she didn't believe me, and that's just, it was obvious to me that she did not believe me. She went and got Lyle and took him back upstairs.
Now, when you said he pointed, did he point somewhere while he was just? Could you
he
stand
touched
up?
him.
I know
He touched himself down here.
in the genital area.
Yes.
Now, when you said that to Kitty, did she say anything to you or ask any questions?
No, she immediately did not believe me. I don't recall that she said anything to me.
Did she ask Lyle any questions? Like, has this been happening?
No.
Or how would you say this? Or
No. She just took him upstairs. So it was dismissed.
How did she take him upstairs?
She took him by the arm.
She pull him out of the room?
Leading him out, yes.
Forcefully or gently, or?
More forcefully.
Was he taken out of there quickly?
Yes.
How did he look?
Bewildered.
Did you talk to anybody about it after that?
No.
Why not?
Because it was never discussed after that. And I convinced myself that I was in the wrong, that I was wrong. Not sure why.
For having told Kitty that you were wrong?
Yeah.
All right, the statement attributed to Lyle Menendez is not being received, ladies and gentlemen, for the truth of whatever he said, just the fact that he said it to the witness. All right, any further questioning?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You okay?
She must feel so
During
guilty for
any
not
of the
telling
visits,
anyone.
did you observe Kitty drinking?
Yes, I did.
And which of the visits, if you can remember?
All of them.
Like she
And
looks
what would
like
her
she
pattern
had, like
be
she's carrying
about
guilt
drinking? Would she drink all
for
day
not having
long,
told
or
anyone other than
when would
Kitty.
she drink?
Generally from the afternoon on, more so in the last visit than in the prior visit. She had specific liqueurs that I strongly remember in the 76 visit. Grand Marnier, Liqueur Galliano, and 45, which was from the Caribbean area.
And would she just have a small glass and sip it after dinner?
She
or
would
what
pour
the
it
pattern be?
in. She had it with her coffee, and she poured.
no.
She would pour probably about this much into her coffee.
Approximately 2 inches, Your Honor.
Appears more like an inch.
Inch and a half. When she finished her coffee, sometimes she would pour the liqueur and sip on that by itself.
So she would pour some liquor into the coffee cup?
Yeah,
after that?
yes.
And
She was drinking it.
would that be the same amount or more? Or?
I just recall watching her pour it into the coffee mug after she'd already been drinking it.
And this would start in the afternoon?
Yes.
And did this happen on a regular basis?
Yes.
Would she sometimes have more than just the 1 cup of coffee and then the second?
Yes.
How many would you see her have?
2 or 3.
And was this an issue in the family? Did Jose drink with her?
In 76, it wasn't. In 82, 83, she was drinking more and she was starting to hide it from Jose.
And what would Jose do to check on whether she was drinking?
Sustained.
Would Jose say anything to her about her drinking?
He was teasing her.
Unless it was said in front of the defendant's objection sustained.
Was it said, were there
Yes,
ever
it
any
was.
discussions in front of Lyle and Erik about her drinking?
Yes.
And what
And
was
they were
it?
brought into them. He would tease her about it.
And tease her in terms of it's gentle teasing, it's a family joke, it's tolerated, or was
He said whatever he said, and he was always laughing, but it was generally a belittling type thing that he was saying, but he was always laughing. It was just his way.
would he laugh when he was saying serious things?
Yes.
And was there anything about his laughter that made it seem less serious?
It was sometimes difficult to know whether he was serious or not because of his laugh, and I can't imitate it. But
How many times did you hear him talk to Kitty about her drinking in front of the boys?
Several times throughout the last visit, 82, 83.
Did you find that in your first visit, Kitty seemed to be pleased with you, pleased with who you are, what you did?
Sustained.
It's foundational.
Well, let's get to the,
Did there come a period of time when Kitty became critical of you?
what time frame are you talking about?
Oh, that's what I need to ask.
All right. Again, it has to be something that occurred in front of the defendants.
Did there come a time when Kitty was critical of you in front of
the
Lyle and Erik?
82, 83, very much so.
And what would the criticism be directed at?
I couldn't do enough. It just seemed like no matter what it was about, it wasn't enough.
You talked about the difference between how Kitty and Jose behaved in private versus how they behaved in public. Is that right?
Yes.
And did you ever go to any family functions during any of your visits with the Menendez family?
Yes.
And did you go more than once?
Yes.
A number of times?
Yes.
And would there be meetings or talks to you before those visits in terms of how you were to behave?
Yes, in the presence of the boys.
Okay. And would the boys get these same talks?
Yes, it was basically a family discussion at the table as to what was allowed to be discussed with others, particularly family, relative members.
Okay. And what things, were there things that could not be discussed, you were not to disclose?
Their school performance, especially Erik's at the time.
Was Erik having trouble in school?
Yes, and that wasn't supposed to be known. And also, if they hadn't done well in a particular event, it wasn't supposed to be discussed.
Now,
It was because of the competition.
Competition?
Right, because of the competition.
Objection sustained. The last part of the answer is stricken. And how much longer do you think you have, this witness?
I'll probably have another 20 minutes, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll take a recess and resume tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. And we'll resume tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Witness is ordered to return. Counsel have indicated they had some matters they wanted to discuss before we resume.
Okay. So actually, I think that's probably a good place to cut it off for today because otherwise it's going to go for a bit longer. And we are about at the 3-hour mark anyway. Yeah, this was rough, man. There's a lot more, and there's this evidence now. And actually, I'll take the other one off because Indy's on the floor right now. Yeah, now we have not just suggestions about what has happened in these rooms, and then also like this, there's been testimony before, like there was testimony from Anderson. Brian was Brian his first name? From the other cousin last week about Jose joining them for showers. Now we have seen that that Kitty joined Lyle for his bath, saying that she needed to wash his hair when he was like 15 years old, even though like why certainly should be capable of that by age 7, I would think. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I don't have kids, so I don't know about like at what age are they, have they learned, but certainly by teenage years, you should be able to groom yourself and, conduct proper personal hygiene, that you don't need your parents to come in and join you for that time. That's just so weird. It's so weird. But now we have the testimony from Diane. And before Diane, we heard from Kathleen Simonton. It was more just another witness kind of talking about the sort of tense environment, the way in which they would come down very hard on the kids, including their nieces and nephews, not even just their own kids, but, for all kinds of infractions, big and small. And then there was really no seeming relation as to how hard the punishment would be in comparison to the perceived transgression. Right. Yeah. Now hearing from Diane Vander Molen that Lyle actually came to her one night and told her about these things. And what's so tragic about that is, she did what I think any teenager would think to do, is like tell his mom, even though she's been there long enough to know that the relationship with mom is not a very warm and affectionate one. I think anyone would assume that mom would have the best interests of the kids at heart if there's something like this going on. And it's just so tragic that that's what the reaction was, because it seems like there was familiarity with the subject matter from Kitty, that she was familiar with the claim, she was familiar with the circumstances, didn't want to talk about it. It seems like she was angry about it, and not angry that it was happening, but angry that Lyle told his cousin about it. And it's so horrible, because that means Lyle is not likely to open up to his cousin Diane about that in the future. He clearly, like, this was such a unique opportunity that he feels that he can trust her enough to tell her this thing. She tells his mom, which she thinks is the right thing to do. Anyone would think that that's the right thing to do. But that ended up in this case being the wrong thing to do, because it just probably caused more abuse for him in a lot of different ways, I would imagine. And then for her part, she says, I convinced myself that I must have been wrong, because realistically, who expects that to be happening? Like, it is so horrifying to think that a parent would do that to their own child, that anyone would do that to any child. But like, particularly, you would think that a parent is going to protect their child rather than abuse them in a number of horrifying ways like this. So, I can understand her then being like, I must have been mistaken. If that's the way that Kitty responded, like, I must have misheard him. I must have, like he must be mistaken, or he must be, in some kind of weird attention seeking behavior. And, maybe that's just not it. But I think at the same time, it seemed like I had this impression from her as she's talking about it, that she carries a certain amount of guilt over not having spoken up about it elsewhere. I can completely understand why she didn't, though. Oh, that's so bad. And yeah, Your Everyday Sheep, it was also 1976. I can imagine how different attitudes were then. I agree. I completely agree. I mean, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, like, just the idea that a man could be a DV victim is like kind of a new thing that people are kind of coming around to, because in large part because of that trial, for a lot of people, not for everybody, but for a lot of people. So yeah, in 1993, I think this was also before a lot of scandals with various organizations, it came out involving like youth, particularly boys. It's just there has been a lot that has come out since 1993 about like things that can happen that are horrifying like this, that I think maybe also have shaped the public consciousness of these kinds of matters. So anyway, yeah, this was tough. This was really tough. But thank you guys so much for joining me in this one. This was another doozy, another very important day of testimony. And I really appreciate you guys, being here, coming in every single Monday that we've got this. And if you need a recap, look for it on Instagram. The Instagram handle should be in the description. If it's not, I don't know what I'm doing with myself. I'm pretty sure it is. So, but otherwise, we'll see you next week. We will continue with Diane's testimony. And so we'll be finishing hers up, and then we'll get to the next witness after her. And yeah, that's about it. So I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Monday. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.